Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are jumping into the game between Sari and Fly. It looks like one game has already been concluded in Sari's favor, and they're on to game two. Just as a quick update for the last set, Ranu did end up taking that second game as well, and will advance in the bracket. But looking right now, both players, again, very passive, very high Nexus totals going all the way up to mana 9 here.
Very surprising. Might be a lot of just respect passes, just back and forth, because there's no development on the board except for this River Shaper, and like you mentioned, everyone's very healthy. So curious to know exactly what happened in this game. But Sari is up 1-0. He did already win with his Ezreal Draven. Both players are bringing this deck, and now he's on his Fiora Shen. Whereas Fly, of course, has no wins yet. Has to win with his Ezreal Draven deck, and his second deck will be a Scouts with Grandpa's, of course.
And so, with the River Shaper fighting to connect here, Fiora Shen needs this card draw. It's not just because you need to get the spells to back up your units, but by drawing these spells, you thin your deck slightly so you can draw more units on average. Because Sari's hand right now just has the Erica, which maybe will let you pull a Captain Farron to get it out of the way so you don't take that big chunk, or just the Shen doesn't really do anything on its own. But Fly has the answer to just get that out of the way, runs the Scorched Earth into the River Shaper, wants to save the Static Shock to pop a more important barrier down the road.
And here's the Captain Farron being hovered. If it is played, of course, can be captured, but then you have to protect the Erica as well. So it's a two-part game there. You can't just capture and that's it. You have to still protect it from being killed as well. And there is a deny in hand, which is great for Sari. No Improbilators in hand right now for Fly. He might have already used them, though. We're not entirely sure. But either way, deny is there in hand, and Sari's going to be, I think, very ready to always keep 4 mana, because a deny on an Improbulator is massive in this matchup.
I think that you're kind of okay with this setup, right? You're at a pretty decent health total. Erica, despite this tempo swing, is only a 6/6. The spell shield is a bit problematic for this matchup, but your opponent is so close to these decimates being able to finish them off. You just need to keep putting them on the stack and force your opponent to have the denies, right?
But you're still at 18 HP if you're Sari. I think if you only develop decimates, you're not going to really do enough on the board to stop Shen coming down next turn and still having double sharp sight and the deny to stop any kind of kills on Arika as well. So we'll see how it ends up playing out, but right now, Sari has to be very careful. Yeah, just to continue protecting Sarika. I think he's finding the 1 damage here. Not a big deal, of course. You might just sharp set, just because you have the mana to do so, and it's gonna keep it a little bit healthier.
Keep it from dying from the thermogenic beam,
or any kind of damage base spell as well, like guillotine, for example. Shen will have to come down here, and you're going to have to start putting some pressure on the board if you are Sari and trying to end this soon, because, like you mentioned, there are decimates in hand, so if you just continue passing, you can play a decimate per turn, and then, you're going to end up losing a lot of Nexus health as well.
The implications of this stage of the matchup are really interesting, too, because Sari is every turn threatening to just drop Bright Steel formation and close the game out immediately. And you have these decimates, but you can only, if you play 2 decimates, that's all of your mana, and committing just to deal directly with the Nexus like this, you aren't developing any blockers, and you're opening yourself up to just more damage. So we could see Sump Dredger come down just as a desperation blocker, and then it's a matter of what you want to cycle. Depending on the status of Ezreal, maybe you try to get one of those into play as well, if it's leveled up, and get a little bit more burn damage alongside these decimates to finish the game out.
And there's 2 pursuits here as well, which means that the Nexus damage, if you're not careful, you might just die this turn. If you're able to keep Shen healthy enough, we'll see if Ezreal comes down, there's no other units to block as well. You're going to have to play Ezreal probably, or maybe try and kill the Shen, but that might not work if you have things like Sharp Sight and Deny as well in hand.
What's nice about the Relentless Pursuit here as well is the barrier is going to just keep sticking around, and it's just you get to continuously threaten. You have to block this unit. You have to use more and more and more spells on this unit. Even if Arika somehow dies and Fly gets that Captain Farron back, you know, it adds more decimates to the hand, but by then it's going to be a bit too late. You get an 8/8, but you're still stuck in that line of needing to spend all of your time and all of your tempo on decimates.
And you have single combat to make advantage of this barrier as well, if something like an Ezreal comes down. So we'll see exactly how Sari navigates this turn. He can win this turn, but it'll have to, you know, it'll mean Fly committing a lot of his spells without thinking there might be a second pursuit as well.
And so now the Get Excited needs to take out this Shen. You don't really have any blockers in play, so if you're able to kill the Shen, then you can develop one thing, maybe to chump block the Eureka, or you take the 6 and then you don't develop unless you absolutely need to. And Sari now...
I think I'm fine taking this Get Excited. You open attack with Eureka, and then you still have mana to play single combat and the second pursuit, and you might just get lethal. Yeah, I think this is a winning play. You take this hit here, you go for 6 now. There's nothing with a barrier and you know, undamaged unit that you can do. If you're Fly right now, you're going to take 6, and you never expect the second pursuit in the same turn, right? That's the problem here.
You can't remove the Eureka. The Relentless Pursuit, there's 2 in the list, of course, and whatever unit is developed, like you develop the Ezreal in response here to get the blocker, it will simply die to the single combat. So Sari ends up with the perfect combination of cards here.
And now when probably you're tapped out of mana, so depending on what comes out here, but there's very few counters on it. Yeah, it's going to be, well, actually an interesting bubble bear there, but going to take the 6 perfectly, can't block. So almost just enough health to kind of become a problem, but perfect 6 for 6, gets its own combat here, and then can go face once again. And there's only, no mana, no options left for Fly, and that will be a game here.
Yeah, not even something cheeky like being able to have the single combat damage the Erica, and then you get to flock or something. But we caught the very end of that matchup, and it was so interesting to see that both players had such high Nexus health and very passive play all the way up into the end. The Fiora Shen and the Ezreal Draven, both decks are basically built with these super late game, just game-ending win conditions in mind. Big unit with double pursuit, Captain Farron, Bright Steel formation, etc. That things are just going easy breezy and then just explode and the game is over.
I think a lot of that, you know, kind of respect passes, and the reason why, you know, the game was so odd to look at once we joined was because Eureka is now a thing in the deck, and that means you have to, you know, think about the counterplay of you dropping a Farron and then just being instantly countered, and you having to deal with, you know, not having any units next turn. You've just wasted 8 mana basically, and there's going to be tools to protect this Eureka as well. Once you're at that 9-10, you know, 9th or 10th turn, you have all the spell mana to help make sure the Eureka cannot die to any of the spells that Ezreal Draven has. But yeah, interesting matchup, interesting final end to the game there. And that's a 2-0 for Sari, so that's the end of the quarterfinals. Sari does advance and moves on, and Fly drops down to the loser bracket.
So now we have an opportunity to get caught up on the bracket because we only saw a few bits and pieces of these sets. We've got MrBear 2 over Hellscreamer, and Salty Simon actually taking down Agigas to move up in the bracket. We already mentioned that Ranu was able to take it over Flaxeau, and Sari just clinched that win against Fly. So we've got some really powerful 2-0s across the board for the top half of the bracket. And we've got the next set of matches already locked in: Fly and Flaxeau, then Agigas and Hellscreamer.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see, you know, both Sari and Simon have made it, you know, into the semifinals. They were our 2 finalists in the last tournament, so they've already proven they have what it takes, not just to be a great player in tournament, but to be a great player in tournament in this current meta and with this, you know, current expansion in these cards, and being very familiar with certain decks like Fiora Shen, like Ezreal Draven, that are very strong as well. So I'm very excited to see. Maybe we'll get a chance to see, I think, MrBear this time. We haven't seen him play in a long while, so we'll see that match with Simon coming up very soon, I think. But first, we're gonna move into a break for, you know, a quick little break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. So stay tuned.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight Night Legends EU. We are getting into the next stage of the bracket now. A lot of 2-0s in the first part, and now our next match is Salty Simon versus MrBear,
And
our
Simon, of
last week finalist against a new contender here.
And Simon, of course, like you mentioned, coming in, not the hottest. He's not sorry he didn't win the tournament, but proving that he's has what it takes to make it very far. And he's going to try to make it to the winners final as well after winning this match. And that's his goal. We'll see if he can complete it or not. But here's Simon. He's from Sweden, so I have Ranu on the Spanish side and Simon on the Swedish side. I'm covered in this tournament. I have my two biased competitors to root for. But very strong player. We saw it last week, and he's bringing a pretty strong lineup that was already proven to be very strong last week with Fiora Shen and Ezreal Draven. Not the most exciting, but definitely very competitive decks.
The lineup is tried and true. It's just a matter of knowing the matchups and piloting it. And MrBear also coming in from Singapore. And this is a player that has had some very strong showings for Fight Night and various other tournaments, and has been sort of taking a bit of a break from the competitive scene. And the time zone right now, as we all know, is a bit late, but they're still going strong, right? 2-0 here. The further it goes in the bracket, MrBear is gonna have to stay up later and later to keep that win streak going.
Hopefully his play does not, get any worse. Hopefully it gets better over time. Maybe the more you play, even if it's very late, the more at ease you feel competing and making the right plays at the right time. But hopefully that's the case. It is always difficult, of course, for players that aren't in EU or in America. Sometimes the time zones are an issue with Australian players as well. It's always been the case in many competitive title releases. So hopefully it's not going to be a big issue. But MrBear, a very good player. He's proven it. When I've seen him play, he's played very cleanly and always impressed me. So hopefully this is going to be the case in this tournament as well.
And speaking of which, we're going to take a look at the decks that one of the decks that MrBear has brought today. Now, you'll recognize this list. Field of Mina, I believe, is the colloquial term for it. This was a list that was invented in order to counter the Shadow Isles Feel the Rush, right? Your opponent plays Feel the Rush, and because you're running Ionia, you have Deny for it. Or if it does resolve, you maybe have minus Swiftfoot in order to just kick those units right back to your opponent's hand and then get the advantage from there. I think that MrBear brought this list probably anticipating a few levels up in the meta game, so to speak, with Go Hard being nerfed and not really seeing a lot of tournament play, maybe expecting a little bit more Ezreal Draven, right? Because then the Feel the Rush comes out of the woodwork to counter that list, and then you try to counter the counter.
It's an experimental list that it's obviously seen play in tournaments and it's a list that's known, but it's not a list that's ever taken over the meta or become, this very, rampant deck that we see everywhere, because I think, like you mentioned, it has very specific counters and a very specific use as well in a specific lineup as well in a tournament. So we'll see if it was the right choice to bring in. Maybe this might just be a comfort pick from MrBear. He might just feel like playing this deck. And we've seen it happen in these, Fight Night tournaments where players we saw Marcus win with Deep, which is something that I didn't expect to see in the past few months, but it did occur. So there are cases where players just feel very comfortable on a certain deck and they bring it for that reason and not so much a read into the tournament meta. Because with Go Hard getting nerfed, you wouldn't expect to see as much Feel the Rush, I think. And then you wouldn't expect to see the counter for it. So it's a bit odd to read into it that way, but it's going to be a fun deck to see played, I think. It's always going to be a fun one to see Mina Swiftfoot in action.
And the list, again, just is in that same vein of playing very passively and then having this explosive late game power. So it has that same sort of cadence that we're seeing from Ezreal Draven and Fiora Shen regardless. So hopefully the draws are there. The Catalyst of Eons comes down when it's supposed to, and Feel the Rush comes down when it's supposed to. Notably, this list is running triple Avalanche and double main deck Icequake. So a lot of AoE board clears, maybe expecting to just AoE a Plaza deck or something like that into submission as well. But we can take a closer look as well into, of course, what Salty Simon has brought. The Fiora Shen and the Ezreal Draven are very classic picks, but each player tweaks them ever so slightly to their own tastes and tries to counter the meta in their own specific ways and adapt to the matchups that they're expecting.
Yeah, Ballistic Bot was obviously a key addition to Ezreal Draven after the latest release of cards. And we saw some differences with Scorched Earth, for example, because of the inclusion of more just landmark decks in general with Plaza, for example. But in this case, we see it here. House Spider down to 2. Ballistic Bot takes over as 3 copies in that 2 mana slot. The rest of the list is pretty standard. Chump Bump was kind of a cut over because of Ballistic Bot coming in, adding your discard fodder, and just much more efficiently as well, and for a cheaper mana. And just working well with the Ezreal axis, with the Draven axis as well, for example. So Chump Bump has been cut as well, but Tri-Beam still staying strong, being one of the key cards in this, just to make this deck really shine on ladder and in tournaments.
Last week, we did see some really hilarious pulls off of it. So hopefully we can get a little bit of that repeating this week. And notably, no Scorched Earth in this version, just going for double Guillotine, which is more of the classic build. No longer is Ezreal Draven really. I think that as time has gone on, people have figured out how to sort of adjust their playstyle and their mulligans for Grand Plaza and aren't as worried about answering it outright.
And the other deck for Simon is going to be a just Fiora Shen list that we saw him play pretty much the same list, I believe, in the last tournament where he was playing Arika, and is now, it was sorry that included Arika now in his list this tournament. So 2 great players learning from each other, it seems, in terms of text. But right now, jumping into the game, we see Simon here on Ezreal Draven and MrBear on Ezreal Draven. Exciting mirror match ahead of us.
And the double House Spider opening is fantastic here, right? You need these chump blockers. And health total in the mirror match is so important. Neither deck can heal, and so the damage you take is going to stick. Once you get down to, again, that sweet spot of 12, the triple decimate's going to finish you off. So it's so important to hold on to this early game as much as possible. And MrBear going to offer this trade. I want you to throw this 2/2 away. Maybe I have something in hand that's going to clean this 1/1 out, and then I'll maintain unit advantage.
Yeah, I'm going to offer the trade, but not going to offer his card. It seems his stream is a bit delayed, so we're going to be missing out on his hand for now. But we have, Simon's hand at least to look at, and we can, it's always the player on the bottom. You kind of side with him a bit more, I think, subconsciously. So it works out anyway. In this case, like you mentioned, Draven, a great 3-drop that MrBear had, whereas Simon had the Ballistic Bot instead, has a discard fodder now, and has the chance to play a Static Shock here to damage 2 units and maybe take him down with a Mystic Shot.
This is, if you're in Salty Simon's shoes right now, this is actually pretty scary. The Draven Sump Dredger is a lot of power on board early, but also your opponent is potentially farther ahead of you in the stacking up their Improbulators. Notably, Simon does not have any in hand, has the Captain Farron on lock, however. So this is going to be really important. We can see here that Salty Simon is attacking on odd turns. So another thing potentially working against them where they aren't going to have the attack token on that 8 mana with the Farron.
And this is, if it's a Tri-Beam, this is going to be a very scary tempo swing here from MrBear. It's going to be a Static Shock instead. Still 3 mana up, so still a lot that he can do here with 3 mana. Could be a Guillotine, could be just, wanting to kill his Ezreal before it attacks here and gets that free Mystic Shot. But yeah, Simon is running 3 Farron, so maybe too many Farrons in the deck, and it's showing his hand being a bit clogged up here with double Farron already early in the game.
With the mirror match potentially being very slow and very even, the triple Farron just guarantees you have that win con specifically when you need it. But the trouble of having 3 drops, sets of 3 in your deck, and I've heard some players say in the past, is to have 3 copies of a card in your deck means you don't necessarily mind having 2 copies of it in your hand. And we're seeing that here with the double Farron. Once one comes down, you really don't ever need the second.
We're not sure what MrBear's hand looks like, but if he has a Tri-Beam, it can be kind of if one player has it, the other one doesn't, it can be a huge swing later on, especially if MrBear is able to get it up to maybe, 8, for example. That would be a big problem. Once Farron comes down, if it's answered cleanly with a Tri-Beam, it's a huge tempo swing, and it could just be game winning for MrBear.
With a board setup like this too, the 2 1 HP units in play aren't really a huge threat against Ezreal Draven. They have so many ways to chump block these out, to just clear them with spells. The double Ballistic Bots, I predict, are going to be sticking around for quite a long time. And so this is going to be 2 damage per turn, and these are just going to keep stacking up and up and up. If you ever do eventually need to trade them in, they are going to trade up into something big.
And a lot of 3-drops have been played by MrBear, which, isn't a guarantee he has tri-beam, but it's usually you want to try and get as many 3-drops as possible, on a curve and when it makes sense, of course. But a lot have been played already. We're not sure what his hand looks like if he's had a tri-beam from the beginning, but it could be already at, maybe 4 or 5 counters. It wasn't played on Ezreal last turn, which is, I think, a pretty big tell. I think if you have a tri-beam that's already at 3 damage, once Ezreal comes down, you usually play it because it's just a huge tempo swing and it takes care of a very threatening unit. So maybe to tell if there wasn't one or it was just drawn, maybe it wasn't enough yet.
If MrBear really does not have the tri-beams, then theoretically, the mirror match here is going to be favored by Simon from the current position. The double ballistic bot's going to give you that direct burn that you need in order to get your opponent into Captain Farron range. And we already know that they have the Farron, right? MrBear, we're still seeing their line of play being a bit more aggressive, maybe indicating that they have not yet drawn into the late game here.
That being said, Simon is not attacking on 8, which could be a problem. I think he would have liked to attack on 8 to play Farron and be able to attack and at least ask MrBear, do you have a Farron of your own to block my Farron? If not, then you're going to be eating some chip damage there as well. No rummage was drawn either, which would have been great with double ballistic bot. You're getting just basically free draws basically, but has not been found. And yeah, just static shock there as well. So less than ideal hand for Simon, I think. Gonna just go full attack here. The axe can, of course, instantly get to attack to any of the ballistic bots. And it could be the kill on Draven here.
Simon is going all in. Again, just wants to force MrBear to trade that board in, right? Needs to make sure that he's not too far behind in terms of unit advantage when you are committing all of your mana next turn to this Captain Farron. So I do like this swing here. And again, the potential, as you said, with the axe to just pump up these bots to also clear the Draven, I think is fantastic. MrBear going to save the ballistic bot right now. And
you can static shock. You can also just put an axe on Draven and get the +1 attack that way on the ballistic bot. So you kill the opponent's Draven, your Draven gets 1 counter, just in case you want to level him up. Not usually the case in this matchup, but can sometimes happen. I believe we will see. I mean, you can just static shock after the fact and kill Draven that way as well, if you're scared of some type of reaction. But I think it just makes sense. Yeah, you can go for damage here. There might be a mystic shot in response, but at least you got the kill on Draven.
And that, ever so important chip damage, 16 HP. Salty Simon is, despite being, theoretically behind in terms of improbulators and whatnot, with MrBear not being able to properly press that early pressure, then Salty Simon is now looking to swing this game back into his favor and has succeeded in getting that damage through thanks to the ballistic bots being drawn and played early.
Static shock is played here just for the card run to get, to save one of his ballistic bots at least. We'll see probably Farron played from both players next turn. If I'm being honest, definitely from Simon, I believe. There would be no reason not to. And I think, you don't really have many more options in hand. It's 2 Farrons and a guillotine, and there's no damage units on your opponent's side of the board. So it'll be the question now if MrBear has his own Farron, basically. Ezreal is a good draw, but there aren't really any spells you didn't find. I think the key was rummage to really use those ballistic bot ignitions to your advantage and be able to draw for basically free. We'll see what next turn, what answers MrBear has in hand, because we don't know right now.
And because Salty Simon followed up with his own attack with some additional spells and some removal, not only is the board preserved, they now have even more bodies threatening alongside this Captain Farron. Despite not being able to attack right on 8, the open attack on round 9 looks to be particularly devastating. And there's a second rummage for MrBear. Still trying to draw through and look for some more threats, it looks like. No indication of hand quality right now for MrBear. Once we get to round 8, I think it's pretty safe to say that MrBear has drawn, hopefully, at least one Captain Farron, and that's what Salty Simon's going to be expecting. But again, in this match, both players just slap their Farrons down on the board and then just trade them into one another.
And the rummage early could, of course, indicate that you're just looking for a tri-beam before you play any other cards. You want to make sure you find the tri-beam first, and then you're able to play your 3 drops and get the counters on maybe 1 or 2 different tri-beams. Or you might just be looking for Farron, like we mentioned, just cycling through his deck and using those ignitions as just discard fodder to be able to, draw cards efficiently.
And at this point in the game, the ballistic bots have come down, but it's just a little bit too late. At this stage of the game, you have to take that turn off anyway to play your Captain Farron. With MrBear just floating some mana here, you maybe have some leftovers to get the ignition snuck in. A couple rummages have already been played, so you're losing out on that extra value of the ignition serving as that discard fodder that you want them to.
And Simon's Ezreal should be 5 out of 6. I believe he used two static shocks and the one mystic shot early on the first Draven, whereas MrBear's I'm not entirely sure, but Salty Simon, I think that's the reason he played it as well. He's very close to leveling it up.
Just get the Ezreal down, and now you just have this 3-pronged attack against the opponent. You have the Overwhelm with the Farron, you have the Decimate, you have this wide board, and you have the Ezreal about to level up. And there's Farron number 3. And even though this seems like it might be a brick, Simon has all the pieces they might need in play.
Missing a rummage because he's going to have a lot of cards to discard. He's going to have 9 different decimates that he can discard if he plays out all these Farrons. So hopefully, I think he wants to try and find at least a targeting spell to level up Ezreal and maybe some spells to go along with it to try and get some burst damage from Ezreal as well.
So MrBear does not have Captain Farron. I think that it's just, especially with the attack token, it seems just like such a straightforward play, but maybe there's some other line. Yeah, you have the spell mana, go for the rummage first, just to see what your options are going to be. Nice burst pass, wants to see what Salty Simon's going to do. And yes, of course, they do commit the 8 mana to Captain Farron and tap out. So now how does MrBear react to this one?
I think MrBear was worried about playing his own Farron and there being a beam, for example, with exactly 8 mana there for Simon, because it would not just kill the Farron and kind of stop his development this turn, it would also level up Ezreal, and then next turn you go into getting all your mana back and it being a pretty big threat with Ezreal leveled up as well.
Yeah, so with that in mind, the burst pass is fantastic. The rummage was perfectly timed, and now MrBear is still in a heap of trouble. Even though you might have your own Farron in response to this, in terms of board state, in terms of being ahead on leveling up the Ezreal, everything in this mirror is actually in Simon's favor. Despite drawing these 2 Captain Farrons early, everything else went according to plan.
Yeah, no Farron here for MrBear. Could be a Tri-Beam playing this Draven out first. Still 6 mana up, so has the chance. And he's an attack token, so he doesn't have to worry about the Farron this turn. But next turn, like you mentioned, I think it'll be a huge swing here and could be problematic. Yeah, there's a Tri-Beam.
6 damage Tri-Beam to soften up this Captain Farron. Gets an Auroch Glinthorn. That's pretty spicy. So if the Glinthorn attacks, then the Farron would actually be stunned. And then another unit would need to trade into this 6/6.
Yeah, not a bad pull at all. I mean, definitely you're already getting the 6/6 stats for that 6 damage, and you're getting a great ability on it as well that synergizes with what your deck wants to do. It wants to, it has a lot of synergies with damage units. So no complaints here, I think, from MrBear. I think he's seeing it here. He's going to go for the attack here with Draven, with Ezreal, with basically everything, and we'll see how Simon decides to block here. And this Farron, it's not dead, but it basically is. Next turn with the mana back from MrBear, if there's ever an open attack, this Farron will probably be dying to many different cards like Mystic Shot, like Scorched Earth, like Guillotine. So we'll see what the answer is here and how Salty Simon decides to block for this turn.
And yeah, what a great come up. The Tri-Beam was stacked up to 6, and although I wasn't able to properly track its position in the hand, I wonder if we go back in time, there is potential where that Tri-Beam had potential to be cast on the Ezreal, like you had mentioned, right? But MrBear chose to hold on to it, maybe for this moment, needing to, if they were whiffing on the Captain Farrons, maybe no Thermo Beams in hand, then you're saying, okay, well, I just need to make sure this Improbulator is stacked up enough to use it as removal instead. And Auroch Glinthorn is, one of the best pools I think you can get in the 6 mana slot, specifically because of the synergies with the deck. We now have another House Spider coming down to reinforce this line, and now you just have to make sure you have a fast answer for this potential Captain Farron overwhelming open attack.
And MrBear has used, I believe, 2 or maybe even 3 Remages, so there's a high chance he has more Tribeams in hand as well. He's been able to cycle through his deck very efficiently in the mid game, so we'll see if that ends up being a benefit as well. Here, the Farron attacking, I don't imagine it's going to survive and pushes damage through. It's not blocked as well right now from MrBear, so I imagine there's going to be some kind of answer here. Could be Mystic Shot, could be Scorched Earth, could be many different things. You know, this Ezreal Draven deck kind of thrives on killing damage units very easily with Flock as well for just 1 mana. So yeah, there's a Flock onto the Farron. So all that 8 damage just poofs, disappears. No more damage being pushed right now onto the Nexus for MrBear. And this is one of the, you know, scary attack token turns for Simon, and completely negated by MrBear. And this is helping his opponent's Ezreal level up as well.
So Simon now going to just commit the guillotine to clear the enemy Ezreal. You saw that MrBear put the spinning axe on it so that it would clear. And so this is going to be the final level up, I believe, for Salty Simon's Ezreal. So not only is it not going to take the damage from this trade, but it's also going to level up, get that nice +1/+1. And now the rest of the cards in this hand are going to be some more direct damage. Even though this Captain Farron is going down, Salty Simon is still slightly ahead in HP.
And we'll see if there's a kill and response from MrBear onto this Ezreal from Simon. If there isn't, this could be a problem, of course, with Decimates now being basically 5 damage every time you cast it. The hand isn't looking too great, too synergetic right now for Simon, but he does still have the guillotine that he can kind of abuse this turn as well onto this Auric as well.
Yeah, the open attack would be very devastating. So right now, Salty Simon has a handful of damage, but is missing out on the reactionary tools you normally like to see. This guillotine is basically going to need to be committed to the Auroch. But
that's
now,
a good thing about Ezreal Draven is that if you can kill a unit, there's really no kind of counterplay in terms of helping units survive. So you have the guarantee that if you have something like a guillotine right now and there's an Auric dead, there's no health. You know, there's no spells that are giving health in these decks, so it's always that, you know, nice thing to know for sure that, okay, this is gonna die no matter what. But
ooh, so MrBear just gonna pass back, knows that Salty Simon needs to cast this fleeting copy of Guillotine, and is just waiting for that to be committed before they summon something else. And gonna throw out the Scorched Earth. You had already said that if they have the Scorched Earth or a Guillotine of their own, that clearing the Ezreal is going to be top priority. So with now this Scorched Earth on the stack, Salty Simon is going to cash in as many spells as they can.
Yeah, and you get 2 extra damage this way from, you know, waiting for your opponent to be the one to commit first, and then playing on the stack and getting your spell out before that resolves. So heads up play by Simon gets that little bit of extra damage with the axes as well before the Ezreal dies. And now, well, we're back to square one. 2 Dravens alive, and still MrBear hanging on there at 12 HP, but there are going to be more Farrons that MrBear has to have an answer to.
MrBear has been set down to the kill zone of 12 HP. So now the triple decimate is going to close this out unless MrBear is able to make a miracle happen with no Captain Farron down, right, to pressure this or get another burst of damage. Where does MrBear go from here? I guess you're just relying on them playing decimate into your, I don't know.
I think you have to block here just to not take this damage, and the only thing that can really do it for MrBear now is Ezreal, and just the perfect kind of cards and synergies. But yeah, with just the fact that you know that there's going to be no healing involved in any of these decks, it means that right now, like you said, 12 is a magic number. You let your Draven die here because the board doesn't matter anymore, and you just spam out your decimates over the course of this turn and the next turn, and that should be game for Simon.
And when you look at the round timers and the attack token and just the round number, once this round is over, Salty Simon is going to get the first action of the next round. So there's going to be no counterplay there. Once the turn goes to the next one, that third decimate would come down with no healing and no counter. So
the moment MrBear committed the attack there with only the Draven and didn't play a Farron or didn't play anything else to make Simon react and defend himself, he just, I'm not going to say through the game because we didn't know what his hand looked like. He might just not have had really any great plays to make or any way to win the game at that point. But once that attack is committed, Simon knows he just has to, take his, just block because the Draven now is irrelevant and just play out his decimates. And he's won the race basically. So game one goes to Simon. Great play from him as well. The mirror is always a bit odd to look at because it's, sometimes someone has a card, someone has 3 Pharons, you can't do anything against it, for example. But great play from Simon nonetheless. And now Simon is on his second deck, the Fiora Shen deck, and MrBear decides to stay on Ezreal Draven for game 2.
Now, Ezreal Draven, I think, is slightly favored for this matchup. You have a lot of spells that can, pop barriers and stuff to really throw off the combat of a list like this. The opening turns where you're floating a lot of mana, the way both sides like to do. Ezreal Draven just also wants to participate in that. You want to just float a bunch of mana and just relax. Once you get to the later stages of the game, as long as you have your opponent whittled down ever so slightly to get your Captain Pharon down, then your opponent is having to save all of their denies for that specific eventuality. So if you have the Mystic Shot here for the River Shaper, and you just try your best to keep these from snowballing on you, hopefully you can just stabilize and this deck won't become too big of an issue.
Yeah, an awkward hand here to start things off for Simon, and not attacking on 4 either. If he takes his attack, it's really not great. No Fiora, of course, either, and looks like the perfect start for MrBear with the discard fodder with the Draven as well. The single combats in this current board situation, not ideal either. So yeah, Simon's not happy, I think. Definitely not the start you expect when playing Fiora Shen. Another big thing to look out for is going to be denying this matchup against something like Tribing, for example. But right now, no deny in hand for Simon. Of course, MrBear can't know this, so he has to play very careful. He can't just commit his Tribeam any time. But once Simon drops under 4 mana, then it's kind of a green light for Simon, or for MrBear rather.
And this is sort of a little bit of what happened last time, right? Where MrBear had a really good curve, a really decent and aggressive start, and ended up just not being able to close out the game. Didn't have that Captain Pharon top end because they were spending all of their mana on units and not really reacting to Salty Simon's play. They also weren't leveling up the Ezreal. And in this matchup, a strategy like that is a little bit more sound, where you're just trying to fight for the board, because while Fiora Shen has denies and barriers and stuff to manipulate combat, you have removal spells to also swing things back in your favor.
And Ravenous Flock, very, very strong, of course, for 1 mana, able to get an answer here at single combat. There is still 6 mana for MrBear to play with, that maybe he wants to deny the single combat and keep his Draven alive.
Yeah, notably, this version doesn't have Nopify in it, which was, again, a card that was included in a few versions of Fiora Shen. But again, with no go hard and, only a small smattering of other decks where you really feel the need to Nopify, it's not really a huge deal. But Fiora Shen is just trying to get whatever they can to stick. Eventually, by drawing with the River Shapers and protecting their units with the barriers, even if some things go down to a Ravenous Flock here or there, you're still going 1 card for 1 or 2 cards for 1, and they just try to run you out of resources. And we've seen that. It doesn't happen very often, but we have seen it every once in a while where Ezreal Draven will run out of resources and they're just praying for Rummage, for example.
And Static Shock, the perfect answer to pop the barrier there and kill this River Shaper. Does get the draw still, of course, and does trade with Ballistic Bot, but at least it's not for free with the barrier being popped, and you get the card draw if you are MrBear as well. And there's a Rummage making use of this Ballistic Bot discard fodder that's created every turn, able to draw into more cards, possibly Tribeams as well, to try and get those counters on before you play your 3 drops.
And when you force Fiora Shen to, swing and trade in their board, they have to spend their mana reestablishing. And as you mentioned, it's so dangerous for Salty Simon to drop under 4 mana. And so you are at a disadvantage in situations like this where you want to play units and you want to reestablish your board, because when you go under, you're giving MrBear the green light. And Ezreal gonna swing in here. We've got the Sharp Sight here on the River Shaper. These River Shapers have gotten a significant amount of value, not like the outrageous amounts that we're used to seeing in Fiora Shen, where they have continuous barriers over and over and over again. But just getting 1 or 2 draws off of these each is usually what you need to make sure that they've at least done their job.
Not just that, but also stopping the Ezreal, Nexus Strike with still mana up for Mystic Shot, having to use his own Mystic Shot from hand, and now MrBear down to 4 cards, even after using a Rummage. So not looking great in terms of Salty Simon. He has a much fuller hand, and like you mentioned, I think a more conclusive board here with Screeching Dragon coming down, and we'll see what the response is from MrBear.
At this stage of the game, MrBear is probably going to need to get like a really key improbulator. Potentially Captain Farron next round is just a large blocker to really help stabilize this board. If Salty Simon's able to get like 1 or 2 more units to stick on this with the double Relentless Pursuit, we could just see a really explosive end where MrBear doesn't have the mana to develop units and or answer the offensive onslaught here with Shen giving barrier, and then with the rally potentially reestablishing that barrier.
And second Static Shock was played there, so Ezreal should be either on 5 or already 6 counters. But right away, Farron dropped on turn 8 in response. There's a riposte to answer there as well with Screeching Dragon on 5 attack, going to be the perfect answer here. You will be taking some damage, of course, but I mean, it can't get better than this. You take down Farron, your Screeching Dragon still survives with the barrier, and yeah, no mana to respond from MrBear is one of the things with Farron. You commit everything to it. If it doesn't work out,
there's the green light for pursuit.
And this is going to be a smashing turn here because you're able to clear, much of this out, and then next turn you can get an open attack as well with a pretty big board. So again, committing to Farron means you can't do anything else, and you're at the mercy of your opponent.
This looks like it could be lethal. Yeah, we've got the Sharp Sight and the Riposte for defense here. If you open attack, you can have the Screeching Dragon just pull the spider to the side. You get the barrier. And this is threatening so much damage. What does MrBear have from this position?
It has to be fast speed. It can't be any kind of beam or anything. There's nothing damage, which means a lot of spells are already immediately discarded as potential answer. And yeah, with the second bear being able to play it and Sharp Sight, nothing to see there. And that's going to be the second win here for Simon. So Simon wins the series. MrBear knocked down to the loser's bracket. It is late for him, maybe too late. We'll find out if he can claw back into the loser's bracket. But Simon continuing to put on a very good show, doing it with decks that have been proven to be very, very competitive. Fiora, Shen, and Ezreal Draven have been staples for a long time now in tournaments, and Simon showing why that is, just playing them very cleanly.
The percentages when it comes to these decks, right? Certain matchups are going to be favored or unfavored, but the real grit of a player, I think, is shown how you make the best of a really bad situation. And we've seen a couple games there in the set where Simon was having like somewhat of a clunky start or maybe a bit of an unoptimal curve, but still managing to play pretty cleanly and navigate the challenges of the match, and then still play towards the win conditions that the deck is offering. So we're going to get a quick update on the bracket here as well to see how the other matches went. We've got Ranu actually taking down Sorry and moving into the winners finals. So now into the losers bracket, we've got Fly versus MrBear, and then Sorry will be fighting Hellscreamer.
And Sorry's going to try his best to get the repeat win this tournament, but he has to now make it through the losers bracket. Last tournament, he was, very comfortable in the winner's side of the bracket the entirety of the tournament. Simon was able to reset in the grand finals to take it to the very last game, but Sorry's still able to win it. In this case now, very different scenario for him. He has to claw into the losers bracket. He's going to have the pressure of you lose a series, you're out at this point. So we'll see what he can do about that. But Ranu in the winners finals, I'm happy about that. He is Spanish, so a little bit of bias there on my end, but a player that I mentioned at the beginning. He's a very strong ladder player. I was wondering if he could take that same experience onto a tournament setting as well, and it seems like he definitely can.
And Frostbite, again, showing that it could be in a very strong position for the future meta games for the tournaments, and hopefully we'll see how that develops once we get back from this break. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight Night Legends EU. And you are just in time for us to get into the winners' finals. We're going to be starting shortly, and that is taking place between Ranu and Salty Simon. Salty Simon was one of our finalists from last week, and Ranu has actually been 2-0ing their way through the top of this bracket with a really spicy Frostbite and Soraka Tom Kench lineup to counter potentially these popular decks right now.
Yeah, very strong player. We saw him at the very beginning of the stream for a short time due to some stream delays and the fact that his series was done in 20 minutes with a very quick 2-0. But a player that I've seen a bit on ladder, playing a lot of Ash Frostbite actually, so I wasn't surprised to see him bring it to the tournament. And it's a strong deck, and in the right hands, if it's a comfort pick for you as well, it's going to show even more. So in this case, not surprised to see Ranu in the winners final. I'm a bit rooting for him. He is Spanish. And you're very excited to see kind of a new Spanish player make a name for himself in the scene, because we saw the EU Masters team being 3 very strong players, but in this case, Ranu hasn't had his chance in the spotlight, I think. And this is definitely, fight nights are made to showcase the best players in Europe, and Ranu seems to be taking advantage of that opportunity.
And notably with Ranu's list, typically in the modern era of Frostbite, players have sort of accepted that Riven is just a nice tech to throw into the list to give it a little bit more early game. But this one returns to Frostbite's more classic roots, right? You've got the 3 Ash and the 2 Sejuani, and by taking away the Riven, it allows you to, instead of clogging up your 3 mana slot, just run a little bit more of that early game that the list is known for. Notably, Avaros and Sentry, which is a card I personally really adore and advocate for in the list, that had slowly been cut out. Just a fantastic early body. So I like that this one includes a little bit more card draw with Avaros and Sentry and Babbling Bjerg, so that you don't run into that situation where you are just praying and praying for Trifarian Assessor to save you.
And only 2 Troll Chants. Obviously one of the strongest spells in Freljord since it came out. It's been in almost any deck that runs Freljord, because it's just that strong at doing what it, at saving your units basically for 2 mana. In this case, only running 2. So Ranu not really seeing it as kind of that. Obviously in Frostbite, it's not as strong. I think you're not trying to save as many units as possible compared to something like a Teemo Ezreal that we saw at the beginning of the stream as well. So a bit of a different, but interesting to see only 2 copies.
I think what ended up happening with Troll Chant is you'll notice that Ranu is running 2 copies of Brittle Steel. The way the meta has shifted, Brittle Steel has just attained its previous levels of usefulness and value to counter specific openings, especially like early things like Zoe that could snowball on you. And so something's got to give. And the Brittle Steel being made with the even number of Troll Chants, I think is a really nice balance for, again, some really powerful combat tricks for the current metagame. We've got the 2 Captain Farrens at the top end, of course, to just give you that last little bit of finishing power you might need. And notably, this list is running 2 copies of Reckoning, and certain decks just completely cave to this monstrous spell. And I'm really looking forward to see some big blowouts from this thing.
And Ezreal Draven is a deck that doesn't really have that many big units other than Farron. It's a lot of, very nice, valuable units that you play for 3 mana, but they're all kind of at that 2-3 attack range. Of course, Ballistic Bot can grow bigger. There's going to be Draven axes that can be used to counter something like a Reckoning, but Reckoning is a card you have to be, very careful about, because it's a card that can create these huge lopsided situations where all of a sudden your board is cleared and you might just lose the game because of it.
That is fair. And just to get a refresher of Salty Simon's Ezreal Draven list, so we can get a better idea of what you're talking about, you'll notice again all of these units all get wiped by Reckoning. You need like Draven axes to maybe save a Sump Dredger. Notably, this version's only running 2 copies of House Spider, so you have a little bit less early game chump blocking that you would normally want in a more mid-rangey beatdown style that Ash is going to be forcing onto you. Maybe just by chump blocking here and there, the guillotines are going to put in a lot of work. Notably, again, with only 2 copies of Troll Chant, no Elixir of Iron, the flocks and whatnot could go a long way towards just keeping the board under control. And depending on who's got the health advantage and board advantage, once you get to round 8, that Captain Farron is going to do what he does best for either side.
And if you're worried about not finding the Farron, Simon is bringing 3 copies of it. We saw him with 3 in hand in the last series, so I'm going to expect he's going to find it by turn 8, and that's maybe the reason why he brought it It's obviously a crucial card in closing out games for both of these archetypes. And the Simon just kind of doubling down. He can get some awkward hands like we saw in the last match, but it is, you know, a card that you want to have by round 8, and this just ups your chances of finding it if you're running 3 copies.
So with this matchup here and just the spread over both decks, we see Ranu's actually just going to open up with the Soraka Tahm Kench. This is another list that is somewhat favored into Ezreal Draven. Notably, Soraka Tahm Kench doesn't have a terribly high amount of Nexus healing. So even though Ezreal Draven's going to have a little bit more work to do to get enough damage on board, once that Captain Farron comes down and the Decimates come down, there is potential for the list to just have so much damage all at once that the list can't keep up. Salty Simon is not running Scorched Earth, so there's actually not going to be a way for them to answer the Star Spring either.
That's the biggest thing. It's not currently in hand, but this is usually a deck that you consider, you know, maybe not as great right now because Ezreal Draven is so rampant, but this version is not running Scorched Earth, and that could be a massive upswing for Ranu. No real plays for turns 1 and 2 for Simon, not even really spells to interact here, so an easy open attack and already down to 14 HP. Draven is played here. You have the rummages, so you have the chance to use these axes very effectively to draw into cards like Tribeam that are not in hand yet for Simon, so it's already 1 3-drop missed on the Tribeam there. You have also a Sum Treasure, a great card here to use with the Draven, you know, after his play on turn 4, but I'm gonna go for the straight up attack here instead.
I like just swinging with the Draven there. The more you develop, the more your opponent just develops anyway. This is one of the few instances where you're going to be able to get that swing. Otherwise, your opponent's threatening to just block you or heal their units, and you're just playing into the Star Spring at this point. And despite having the Draven into the Sump Dredger, we see an Arachnoid Sentry in hand. There's no Tri-Beam getting stacked up alongside these 3-drops, so that has to feel bad.
And this Rummage is searching for it, but still cannot find it. Finds a Mystic Shot and Ballistic Bot instead. We saw the Divergent Path being played there, just something that you would almost never see in this matchup, but because open deckless and because Ranu knows that there aren't any Scorched Earths and no way to interact with the landmark, it's so crucial to get it down as soon as possible and just try and go for that win condition instead of anything else. If you can win before turn 8, then, you know, great. You've dodged the Farron entirely, and that's one way to do it here. So already we see the Soraka, we see a fairly beefy board here, and Ranu going to try his best to not really interact too much into combat, just try and get just a little bit of damage, but not to get any of his units killed.
This is where the mind game happens, right? Where Soraka, Tahm Kench sometimes gets in these awkward spots where they want to attack, they want to try to get their units damaged, but that is a pretty difficult thing to do at this point in the game. Now that your opponent has their, you know, mid-game high attack units down to threaten, even like with the Soraka, for example, trying to swing in, your opponent's like, oh, well, I'll just take the 1 damage. They aren't even going to bother blocking you to give you the opportunity, and you have to worry about Mystic Shot or Ravenous Flock, for example. Ranu might just need to play passively here for the next couple turns to get the Tahm Kench set up, or get the Broadback Protector set up, looking for perhaps Astral Protection as well to really double down on this.
And we'll see here just trying to get some chip damage onto the Soraka, trying to get the level up as well is going to be crucial, and just get some heals going with the landmark already down on the board. You're just, again, that's going to be the win condition 100% for this matchup. You're not going to go for Nexus damage or anything else other than this landmark.
And now Salty Simon is in a position here where they can clear the Crusty Codger with a Mystic Shot potentially, but Ranu with this 3-mana open is still very risky because of cards like Guiding Touch. So just has to let this float, and now the Star Spring is just stacking, already up to 8 out of 22.
And we'll see how much damage Ranu decides to take, just to make sure that he's not going to be, you know, you don't want to be dying. Obviously, you don't want to take too much damage, but you want to try and do it so your units can stay alive and they can take some damage, but not enough damage to kill them. And that's obviously Simon wants to not allow it to happen. So we'll see if he goes for the Whirling Death here onto the Soraka. Bastion can deny this.
And this seems fine. Like you can Bastion here, and then it passes the priority back to Salty Simon to potentially just pop that with a Mystic Shot. Just goes for the Guiding Touch instead. Get a heal on your Crusty Conjure. That's going to proc Soraka, so you draw one more card at burst speed. 2 cards rather, and then you get some extra options, a better feel. So here's the Astral Protection, and looks like Ranu's actually just going to let this connect. We see the Soraka's Wish in hand. There is a second Soraka available here.
Yeah, I think with 6 mana still up for Simon, it's just too much. Like, he's going to be able to kill Soraka anyway, so it's not worth trying to protect with Bastion. You can just develop your Tom Catch instead, and then try and get some value out of it next turn.
Ranu considering the Hush here. There is a lot of implications for using this card right now in the matchup. Typically, you want to save Hush for Captain Farron, just so you don't have to worry about that overwhelm damage. But perhaps Ranu is saying, you know what? I'm at a pretty healthy total with big Soraka in play, that if they do play a Farron and I don't draw into another Hush or some answer, I'll just trade in the other Soraka and just take 1 damage to my Nexus.
And now with 6 mana still up, you have to pass here because the beam is too much of a threat on Tom Kench. We'll see what Simon decides to play here. If you can just pass right back. Of course, the counter on the landmark is still ticking, but you're not getting maybe as effective of an end of round tick if you would have been able to develop a bit more. So in the end, there just going to be a pass from both players.
Shakedown doing a lot of work here. The vulnerable that it grants is permanent, of course, so you're able to just constantly take advantage of that to force your opponent to give you the good trades that you want. And even though, there's potential for Spinning Axe, there's potential for other removal spells to complete for the kill on the Crusty Codger, the risk is just too great. Salty Simon is just going to say, fine, I'm going to let you get all these value trades that you want and damage your own units, but I plan on killing you before Star Spring becomes an issue. And we'll see if committing to this particular line of play is correct. Ranu finally getting the Broadback Protector down to try to shore up the healing on their Nexus.
And Ranu deciding what the best play here is. Obviously, I don't think you want to play Astral Protection because then you're kind of missing out on it could be a game-winning card without any landmark removal. It's a card that can heal you for so much that, I think Bastion is a better choice here. You play pretty passively here, and that's one more threat on the Ezreal level up as well, which could be win condition. Right now Ranu on 10 HP. You have the heals now from the Broadback, but it's still a dangerous HP total, especially going into turn number 8 where Farron might come down.
And by using the Bastion on the Broadback Protector, it is going to leave it at 5 HP, so it will be safe from a Ravenous Flock. So really smart play there. You again have potential for the Astral Protection to really come down and do gangbusters with this Soraka combo. That's the deadly dream right there, is you have the Astral Protection on like a 7 HP unit, and if you can manage the combat to finagle it in such a way where it goes down to like 2 HP and then you just up heal it all the way with leveled up Soraka, suddenly the Star Spring just burst heals and your opponent just doesn't account for that. Like, look at this now. Astral Protection on the Soraka, she's going to take 8 damage, and then when you open attack the next round, she's going to fully heal herself. And I think the Star Spring is actually going to be complete when you heal the Broadback Protector as well.
The worry now is there a chance for Simon to be able to win the game before next turn finishes? Because just with Ezreal level up, for example, if he's going to go low enough. And that's really the only answer here. There's no mana, of course, this turn, so Simon is locked out by playing Farron. He has no more reactivity here, and we'll see if Ranu has... if he can heal enough next turn, of course, to get the counter to end next turn, but if Simon can kill him before that turn ends.
Well, yeah, it is true. The Star Spring is a round end effect. So this open attack goes through, Star Spring gets boosted 27 out of 22. So now, can Salty Simon deal 14 damage here?
I don't think so. With 9 mana, I don't, unless they change Decimate to do, 18 damage per hit. I don't think it's the case there. There's the Star Spring's resolve, and that's going to be the win there. And that's the problem. When there isn't a Scorched Earth, you're able to play just very, single-mindedly, like kind of tunnel vision onto only this win condition, and there's really no counterplay from Simon. He couldn't do anything about it. You played even the Divergent Path, which is very low tempo in the early mid game, to find this landmark because it was so important. And with Astral Protection, it's kind of like you mentioned, a key card and being able to heal, 7, 8, 9, and just get that counter done. So heads up, decision to bring this deck if you're Ranu, especially finding a matchup that should be considered a bad one, but Simon with maybe the wrong tech cards, not expecting Tahm Kench Soraka.
Tahm Kench Soraka was always a list that has those really sharp matchups regardless. So just having a little bit of an extra advantage goes a long way. And Ranu now having to switch over to the Frostbite list into Ezreal Draven. We talked a little bit about this matchup before the set began, and a nice safe opening with the Avarosan Sentry. This is a card that your opponent doesn't really want to remove because they don't want to give you the card draw, but you're just going to get this nice little bit of chip damage over and over again. So it's kind of like a precious pet in a way.
That being said, Simon has a pretty god tier hand. He finds 2 Tri-Beams. He finds a Sun Dredger. Not a great hand. You're missing out on something like a Draven turn 3, for example, but still pretty ideal. And Rand, on the other hand, not as ideal. He has 3 6-drops, 2 Reckonings, a bit much there as well, and no Ash, for example. Not much you can do here. Just play out the Sun Dredger and go for the attack there. But we'll see what Ranu decides to, or what he can find on his draws now, the top decks, because a lot of very high top end
from both players. Even with the Farron coming down, we haven't yet seen the Improbulator Dream yet. So having 2 in the hand early like this is going to set Salty Simon up for some really powerful swings later on. Ranu is wanting to, just get like these big high HP units in play. No Avarosan Trappers or anything yet. Oh, speak of the devil. And being able to answer, that big unit or like a Sejuani or something to remove that body and then summon a 6-drop or a 7-drop of your own can be absolutely devastating in a matchup like this. So now Simon right now needs to be very careful about how they allocate these Tri-Beams because, again, Troll Chant.
And right away, 1 comes out already. Could have been much bigger, but that's a pretty good drop there. Elusive, able to push some extra damage there as well, and the toughness. Icefield Archer comes down to deny that from getting any kind of value this turn.
Yeah, I really do like that. And what's good about using the Improbulator is that now you have maybe 1 mana Thermo. It is, again, it's so risky. It's so risky to go for that. And Draven, I think, is fine.
Especially having played 2 Sun Dredgers without hitting discard fodder and having to actually discard cards. If you play Beam now for 1 mana, you're looking at a hand that might run out of fuel in a few turns. With Double Flock also for 1 mana, you can suddenly just play out your cards and you have no more cards to play after that. So I think you have to be a bit more conservative and start playing a bit slower with your beams.
So I like that Salty Simon has the heads up play here, just doesn't want to do anything fancy, sacrifices the Draven because they know that Flock is going to clean up against the Troll Chant there. And with now Ranu at only 4 cards in hand, they don't have that big board that you typically want to see around this point in the game that really makes Trifarian Assessor a threat. This is potentially where Salty Simon gets a lot of pressure relieved off of them to get into the 8 mana, 9 mana places where the Ezreal Draven really shines.
We could see a beam here to take down Sejuani. You're going to be getting that Sun Dredger kills for free, though, due to the Frostbite effect. So this Archer can just take advantage of that pretty easily. But that is, a much better kind of card-efficient answer now with the beam at 6 mana to deal with Sejuani. And now you still have that Flock, or that Tri-Beam, rather, for a potential, a bigger swing later on, onto Farron maybe even. But there's the Axe being very effective onto the trade there. But now you have no Axes to help out against a Reckoning. So that might be a problem. There could be a huge board clear in a few turns.
What was interesting there is that Sejuani wanted to take down the Sun Dredger rather than taking down this elusive unit. And I think that Ranu was probably anticipating a Thermo Beam, because if the Sejuani dies, then, the Icefield Archer wouldn't be able to take down 3 HP plus tough. So I think that's a pretty smart line, just saying, I'll take the 2 chip damage and let this Yeti carry me.
And there's Ranu maybe hoping for Simon to play more into that Reckoning. Doesn't end up doing so. It goes for the pass instead. So a lot of mana wasted in that last turn, but now we are at the magical 8 mana turn right now, and Ranu has the Farron in hand. We'll see if he goes for it. This Tri-Beam should be at around 4 or 5, I think, not much more. So definitely cannot kill this Farron just now. But the sentries will be very effective at stopping the Farron from doing anything this turn.
At this point, I think that it's pretty safe to play it. You aren't under a lot of threat. Your HP total for your Nexus is pretty high. It's going to take, at least 2 cards for your opponent to clear the Farron anyway to damage it and maybe kill it with Guillotine. And now with 2 units in play that have 5 attack or more, it makes the Reckoning a much higher chance of going off.
But it cannot go off this turn, so it's already going to be a pretty good turn for Simon in terms of just stopping the pressure from Ranu. He has the Flock if he wants it as well. He has the Tri-Beam here is going to be pretty big. You can Flock for damage as well if you want to onto the Farron while it's stunned, but you still have one more stun left, so there's no real need to do it just yet. A lot of elusives here. Some pretty good drops here from Simon.
Yeah, normally, getting the Zeeble, it's pretty low stats for the mana cost, but in this particular scenario, you damage a unit and then summon elusive in its place, and there it is, the Guillotine along with the Ravenous Flock. So, 2.5 cards, we'll say, to take down this Captain Farron. And Salty Simon has a really strong open attack here with these elusive units. There's no big units in play for Ranu to enable the Reckoning. If that was ever a consideration or a fear, that is now been put to rest. Harsh Winds being forced to be cashed in here.
The perfect top deck for Ranu stops this open attack, stops most of the damage from coming in, and now looking at the hands, they're both pretty awkward. I mean, the Reckonings, you need to have a 5 attack unit for it to work. You don't have that now. Ranu's just going all in on the Decimates because he can't do much else other than play his Omen Hawk, and the hand for Simon isn't looking too great either. You have the Rummage, sure, but you don't really have discard fodder, so you're having to discard 2 of your actually, useful cards.
Salty Simon needs Captain Farron to put this game back in their favor, because it's only a matter of time before Ranu draws something that's going to enable this Reckoning. And once that happens, these elusives are going to go bye-bye. And then your other win condition that was handed to you by the RNG gods of improbulation is also going out of the window.
And Glory Seeker here once again denied by the Sentry. Reckoning is alive though, and there isn't going to be a direct answer here from Simon. We'll see if he can find a Mystic Shot. Nope, he doesn't find it. Static Shock can be played, but it won't resolve. You won't be able to get the drawn card until after the effect of the Reckoning comes in. So the full board clear now. And this is, what's left in hand for Simon. The Rummage is gone. He has a Static Shock, which of course can draw him another card, which is great, but little else.
And big shout out to the Omen Hawk there, giving the +1/+1 to the Glory Seeker. So I was able to live through this Static Shock. And so, yeah, and notably, Salty Simon saves the mana, right? Doesn't go for the Static Shock just to draw. It's just going to get this damage in. Maybe wants to save it to clear another Omen Hawk or another Avros and Sentry or another Ice Veil Archer, right? Cycles it. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're supposed to just be more patient in this situation. There's a second Reckoning. The Mystic Shot can stop this, though, and that's a lot of mana wasted from Ranu, but mana isn't really an issue anymore. Once you're at turn 10, you have all this mana. We see it here, 8 mana that Simon can't do anything about because he has no cards. I'm not sure if, not playing out or not, using that Static Shock was a mistake because it's going to cycle itself.
You get one more card draw. So now, Ranu, even though both players' hands are pretty awkward, or in Salty Simon's case is non-existent, Ranu did get the Farron down, did get the Decimates in hand. So even without a lot of good cards off the top of the deck, you still have that direct damage and that direct pressure. The second Reckoning being answered with the Mystic Shot is going to be pretty huge here. Ranu is going to sit on this Culling Strike for Ezreal, however, which is also huge.
The moment this Ezreal is played, it's going to be a problem. The open attack here, not ideal. You're going to be trading the Sum Dredger into the Archer. But yeah, both players in a bit of a pickle. The Decimate can bring down Simon to 4 HP. But the Culling Strike and Troll, you have to play Assessor by itself, just without drawing any
draw
card.
one card. Omen Hawk, these +1/+1s are like so just sweetly distributed. And Ash is actually leveled up. I hadn't even been keeping track of the Frostbites, but we had that early Harsh Winds, the double Ice Veil Archer draw, and so now Ash coming down as a 6/4 is going to be hard to answer. So here's the thing. You might need to rummage Ezreal here for Farron.
Yeah, it's you know, it's not a great situation to be in. Simon did discard a Farron very early into the game, so maybe just a bit short-sighted in you know, his discards early on. He played to some judges kind of, I think he maybe was blinded by having 2 tri-beams and trying to get those as high as possible, as quickly as possible, but didn't play as effectively or as efficiently with his discards, discarding 2 actual cards with the some judges instead of just trying to wait for a Draven, which he found the turn after, or waiting for maybe Ballistic Ball to create ignitions. And this is the problem that you run into now. If you're Simon, you don't have cards to do anything with.
Goes for the Enchanted Crystal Arrow rather than the open attack, but gets the Brittle Steel in order to frostbite that unit that was played anyway. So the cracks starting to show here as we move up through the bracket. These decks come down to so many micro decisions and so much decision making that, you know, sometimes some inefficient things creep in here and there. But now that the winner's side has been concluded, the players can take a little bit of a break and maybe recollect themselves. And, you know, it's always a heartbreak when you're running 3 copies of a card and you don't draw a single one.
Well, you did draw one, but you discarded it early on, so that's somewhat on you as well. But Ranu with the 2-0 there win. He's just beat Sari in the semifinals, now beat Simon in the finals. So coming to really play in this tournament, trying to make a name for himself here, taking down last week's finalist and winner as well. So big showing from Ranu. Hopefully he can take that to the grand finals and bring us the same great gameplay. But Simon now has to, again, go into the loser bracket with Sari down there as well and try and claw back into the grand finals.
So, yeah, I mean, Ranu has shown, you know, back to back now that the lineup of Frostbite plus Soraka Tahm Kench is doing very well into the Fiora Shen and the Ezreal Draven. And again, the lack of Scorched Earth is just sort of like a meta tournament specific call. I think if you were to play the deck on ladder, you would definitely bring Scorched Earth, for example. But that just goes to show, right? The tournament players are existing within their own sphere of having to adapt to one another and make changes to the deck that normally would be, you know, blasphemous for ladder play, but in a much tighter and controlled environment, you can get away with some really interesting decks and some really interesting inclusions or exclusions, as the case may be.
Yeah, we haven't seen Tahm Kench Soraka, I think, in the past 2 EU Fight Night tournaments. So maybe players thinking, hey, it's not going to be as prevalent right now, but Ranu decides to bring in the only player that brought it this tournament, and it's been working out pretty well, especially against this matchup with Simon having no Scorched Earth. There was no counter whatsoever. So if you can't stop the healing, then you're going to get the win condition off that alternate win condition with the Star Spring instead.
And with Salty Simon, again, one of our finalists from last week being knocked down to the losers bracket, we're going to check in with the winner of last week's Fight Night, Sari. They are currently up 1-0 in a game versus Hellscreamer, a player that we haven't had a chance to cover quite yet. So we're going to jump in and spectate those players as well. We're getting that match pulled up for you right now because it is an ongoing set. So we saw, I believe we did watch Sari earlier on in the broadcast. We haven't had a chance to go over Hellscreamer's decks, however.
Hellscreamer is playing a Lee Zoe deck, which is, you know, quite prevalent right now in the meta, but also an Ezreal Teemo deck that has Sejuani in it, with foundering kind of the Sejuani Teemo Ezreal deck. So kind of a mix of what we saw earlier with Flaxeau as well, but with Sejuani added in. And but similar idea, kind of the old style Ezreal that plays with Freljord. And you have the Frostbite cards for just burst speed targeting as well. And going into game 2 right now, we see Sari on the Ezreal Draven, 1-0 up in the series, and Hellscreamer is currently on Lee Zoe.
So Lee Zoe is really interesting in that the list loves to get these really shrimpy units set up and then have them synergize and snowball on you. And Ezreal Draven is one of the few decks right now that has the tools to stop this from happening. And it's going to come down to who is going to get their early game plan set up.
And that's a pretty good setup if you're Hellscreamer. You have the Zoe, you have the Mountain Goat, and you have the Sparklefly already. No need to protect because there wasn't any kind of threat coming in terms of spells right now from Ezreal Draven. But there's a Tri-Beam being drawn, also very important. You've missed out on the Draven that came out before it, but still pretty early on. You can get quite a few counters onto this Tri-Beam still.
Draven is in a really good spot here to just swing in on these units willy-nilly. The really low stats means that they can't stand up to this quick attack, even with the help of Pale Cascade or even like Sunblessed Vigor, for example. So just some invokes coming down, super cool star chart. In this matchup, you're looking for maybe an Equinox for down the road against Farron, or just a nice Crescent Strike as well. This is going to be a pretty big brain matchup, I think, when you're playing a control and removal heavy deck into a combo deck like this.
And the rummage there makes sense. You're taking down the Ignition and the Axe. You're pretty much drawing for free, basically. We see the Ezreal being drawn here as well. It was hovered momentarily, but I think really doesn't make much sense right now. You do have an elusive blocker, sure, but then next turn there could be a Pill Cascade, and then you just lose your Ezreal. So instead, the second Ballistic Block comes down.
Ooh, so super cool star chart ended up pulling a Moon Glow, so that's going to give +2 HP and a spell shield to Zoe. This is the other aspect of the deck that isn't really talked about. Usually you'll see like Mentor of the Stones and like a Giga buffed up Sparklefly and then Lee Sin, but maybe it'll just so happen that this Zoe sticks around and we'll actually see a leveled up Zoe win condition.
And not using an Ignition last turn on one of the Ballistic Bots means that now this Mounting Out cannot be blocked effectively, so you're taking that damage again. You're already at 9 HP. You're maybe not too worried if you're sorry, because at the end of the day, this is a combo deck. Until this thing comes down, you're maybe not too scared of just going down to straight Nexus damage. You have an Ezreal to block elusives as well, and obviously you have a lot of spells to try and deal with your opponent's units, but 9 HP this early on. If Lee Sin comes down and if he levels up very quickly, it could just be game. I'm not sure what tools you have to answer Lee Sin that can get a barrier and then has many different spells that can deny as well.
And with Sorry playing so passively and with the double Ballistic Bot, they actually end up burning a Draven. That's really unfortunate because that would have become a Whirling Death for them to use to knock out one of these elusive units. Hellscreamer did invoke again off the super cool star chart, and it was a snap pick. So I'm wondering if they got maybe the Trickster and they want to double down or triple down on this elusive Smork win condition that they're working on.
And this stunts here could be effective by taking down the Spell Shield, but Hellscreamer has his entire board set up for kind of the long haul. He has all the utility units there, and he has 8 mana still to protect his units now. So I'm not sure what kind of onslaught Sorry has planned here, but I expect there will be answers from Hellscreamer.
The Draven was, again, it had a really strong advantage there in the early turns where its stats were really the make or break. And now with a wide board of such varied stat lines where Hellscreamer to block with, it's a lot more difficult for Sorry to swing in on this. Their units are just going to get chump blocked.
This is almost too many units because now you have 2 Eye of the Dragons, and yeah, it's going to be too many Dragonlings next turn. But the threat here on the Zoe, there could be a deny, which is going to be backbreaking, but instead it's a Pale Cascade. So the unit will still come out for Sorry. At least it's only going to be a 3 mana unit, though. We'll see what it ends up being here. And Zoe does end up surviving.
And they get the Golden Crush bot. 2/5 isn't really going to do a whole lot. It'll give you something to maybe clear the Mountain Goat with, but another card needs to be spent here against this Zoe, and they're going to Hush. Look at this, hushing the Zoe so that it returns to its original stats of 1/1, so it's not damaged. So Ravenous Flock fizzles.
Hellscreamer has done his homework. He knows, the very niche interactions between these cards. And that being said, it was, a 1 mana trade for a 2 mana card, and Hush could be a very big card in this matchup, but very heads up play there from Hellscreamer.
Zoe is threatening to level up here. After Zoe came down, we saw the Moon Glow, the Eye of the Dragon, the Pale Cascade, the Sparklefly. I'm trying to count, trying to remember how many cards have been played. A Crescent Strike now. And she's on her way. This Mystic Shot needs to connect, and that Scorched Earth needs to connect. At this point, at 9 HP, Sorry is really feeling the pressure. Lee Sin is far removed from their mind. It's all about getting the Zoe off of the board and trying to keep these elusives under control.
There's 2 Notifies still in the deck. They have not been removed once the Go Hard nerf came through. They're still in this deck for Hellscreamer. He also has denies weren't played last round on the Tri-Beam, so I imagine there's not going to be any denies in hand. Still 7 mana though, so has a few options to save the Zoe.
So Zoe right now, her HP thanks to the Moon Glow is 3. So a Guiding Touch would counter this.
Yes.
Oh my God! And they have it. Zoe leveling up here thanks to the Guiding Touch. And because of the heal, the Scorched Earth is going to whiff against this as well.
That's the second whiff in a row onto the Zoe. So it's what I mentioned when we saw the start of the turn. And it looks like, yeah, there's going to be a hover surrender there. The start of the last turn where you had 9 mana still, if you were Hellscreamer, and your entire board was already set up. You already did all your homework. You know, all your the main stars of the deck, aside from Lee Sin, were on the board. And at that point, you just protect your units, and it's going to be very hard for the Ezreal Draven player to do anything. So Hellscreamer, heads up play there. Some great interactions with certain cards that we saw to save Zoe, and takes it back. So game 2 goes to Hellscreamer, going to be 1-1 in this series. And Sari has to try his best to try and win this game 3 and make it back, trying to renew his performance from last week. But Hellscreamer also trying to take advantage of this opportunity and make it through also to the end of this tournament.
That matchup, I don't think, is ever going to play out that way ever again. Zoe to just continuously live over and over again against a deck that has so much removal that lines up against Zoe like that is just astronomical. And going into game 3, this means that Sari's going to be on Fiora Shen, and Hellscreamer is going to be on the Ezreal, right? The Ezreal Teemo list. And that is also, I think, going to be a very volatile matchup indeed, where an early Fiora could really spell doom for a list like that if they can't get set up in time, because Hexcore Foundry is not making up for its value in terms of board presence the way like Grand Plaza does. So, and Fiora Shen isn't the type of deck that you want to give card draw to either.
Well, Sari lost this game with Ezreal Draven, so he has to play Ezreal Draven still. I guess his first win was on Fiora Shen.
Oh,
and now
so he did get the win? Okay, my mistake.
He lost this game against Lee Zoe, so now Lee Zoe has to switch to Hellscreamer's second deck, which is going to be the Teemo Ezreal Sejuani mashup mentioned. Good. And it's going to be Ezreal Draven still for Sari. Has to find a win on his second deck here in his best of 3.
So how do you feel about that matchup then?
Can't say I've played it too much. I've played quite a bit of Teemo Sejuani without Ezreal. Like you mentioned, I don't really go all in on the Hexcore Foundry. I think they're a bit slow. They're great to have as kind of maybe as a one-off, maybe two-off, but I think it's more important to have, especially it's a very different list of what I play though. Playing this with Ezreal, you're going more for an Ezreal condition. You're not playing things like Starlight Seers. You're playing just for kind of, Tough Cap Peddlers. You're only really, you want to kind of protect. You do have the Elixir of Irons and the Troll Chant, so that it's kind of similar, but you have a lot more Frostbite because you're playing Ezreal and you want to try and maybe get some burst speed kills in the end game.
Gotcha. And also as well with the Hexcore Foundry, you aren't running a lot of the cycling cards from Piltover in this specific variant either. So drawing multiple Hexcores can be really clunky and awkward for you as well. Hopefully the Frostbites just come up heavy, right? That's what you're hoping for. You just need the Frostbites to just be on point and the Troll Chance to be perfectly timed to just keep your opponent from getting a snowballing advantage on you. Notably as well, we've seen a lot of Hexcore Foundry lists experimenting with Go Hard and whatnot, but having access to Shadow Isles gives you a lot more healing with Withering Wail and Doom Beast. So taking this into the Freljord direction is going to be very interesting indeed.
Yeah, the biggest thing you mentioned is Frostbite on Farron. It just completely deactivates that huge turn 8 for Ezreal Draven. It's a turn that if you play Farron, you commit all your mana to Farron, and a single, flash freeze is able to deal with it, or even just an Icefield Archer in response. All of a sudden, if Ezreal's already leveled up, that's a lot of mana that you can use to do damage with Ezreal and not have to worry about any kind of response or any kind of removal onto Ezreal if you're able to play him that turn. And then you have all the next turn at burst speed to just maybe get the kill with Ezreal. So that's the biggest thing here. Farron might be a liability in this matchup for Ezreal Draven instead of a win condition.
With exactly, your burn is all slow speed and very telegraphed, and the burst speed damage of Ezreal and the unpredictability of the mushrooms could also be something that you have to account for. So currently the set is 1-1, and we are jumping in game here with Ezreal Draven versus Teemo Ezreal, and Hellscreamer gets the Teemo on turn 1, and that's just going to tank this Thermogenic Beam immediately. So a lot of mushrooms no longer need to be worried about.
And the biggest thing that denies isn't necessarily the Teemo and the threat of Teemo, but the Sejuani level up. If you're able to play Teemo turn 1, get the attack on the Nexus, and get maybe a lucky Mushroom or 2 on turns 2 and 3, where you can usually do normal Nexus damage with something like a Ballistic Bot, for example, you're able to level up Sejuani very quickly, and she becomes a massive win condition. This deck is a bit more leaning on the Ezreal side, but Sejuani with 2 copies here is still a huge threat once leveled up. There was only a stolen copy of Teemo in the deck for Hellscreamer, and he found it turn 1. Unfortunately, the answer was there from Sorry.
And again, you just have to go for it. Obviously, you never save the Teemo like, oh, they might have it, because the longer you wait, the more likely that they have the answer. So it's great to just throw it out. And maybe even with the thermogenic beam not being a threat any longer, Sejuani has an easier time staying alive or connecting with something really important. Hexcore Foundry is going to come down here. This is probably the best outcome to get it set up when your opponent only has a Draven and a Ballistic Bot in play.
What a hand here for Sorry. Has the triple Tri-Beam, just drew the third one. He has the Ballistic Bots to create some discard fodder as well. He has double. You can play the second one now. We'll see what kind of responses there are. Get excited to hear from Hellscreamer. Fast speed, so you can't deny this Draven right away, and deny the Axe generation as well. But in terms of discard fodder, you're set. You're going to have 2 Ballistic Bots, and yeah, you're more than happy. Just trying to maybe find a Rummage soon. That would be, I think, the key card here to try and find more 3-drops.
With Hexcore Foundry as well drawing you extra cards, that's going to become even more likely. You have to be careful about making sure you don't burn if you commit to double Ballistic Bot, for example. And Hellscreamer with a Ballistic Bot of their own, so now the burn race is on.
Yeah, at this point, I think you just don't play the second bot because, like you mentioned, you're going to just burn more important cards because the ignitions will have preference once the round starts.
Oh man, the double Hexcore Foundry! So now Sorry has to try to empty as many cards out of their hand as possible. And you might just Mystic Shot the Nexus, right?
The Static Shock, it cycles, so it draws itself back. So it's not ideal here either.
You go for maybe a baby Improbulator just to get it out of your hand and not burn? But I mean, maybe even flock this Ballistic Bot. At this point, because you're guaranteed drawing 3 cards at the start of the round, you can maybe just start being really aggressive with your removal and try to use it for tempo.
Sorry, making sure to go over his elementary school math.
I do the same thing
here. Maybe discarding with the Draven Axe because, again, Draven's a card that you play and you have another card in hand still, so it becomes a problem with double Hexcore Foundry. Of course, drawing cards will not be a problem here, so you can discard pretty freely and not feel like you're losing out on value. There's the Ezreal. There's that Ballistic Bot is going to be gone by the end. By the end of this turn, is going to be discarded 100%.
Yeah, so Draven, again, getting the axes so that you're able to discard the cards out of your hand that aren't good for this matchup is going to be fantastic. And now, I mean, instead of using the ignitions for fodder, maybe you just try to cast them. Hellscreamer has a troll chant here, wants to keep this Ballistic Bot alive. This extra burn damage is so important, again, for working towards the Sejuani win condition, even as the Puff Cap Peddler here. Another troll chant, maybe. Elixir of Iron, gonna rummage for it.
You have 2 elixirs and you have 3 troll chants, so 2 and 2 for each of those cards possibilities. And as well, while it still is on the board, it still gets that 3 mushrooms in the deck because of that rummage. But well, you get another peddler instead to replace it. Maybe a swing here from Sorry. Doesn't find a great 3-drop from that Tri-Beam. Solari Priestess without the ability, not too great. Pretty bad low roll there for Sorry.
And so decides not to swing with the Draven. Wants to keep it alive. Again, these axes could be really important, but decides, I don't want to get this extra card in my hand if I'm not going to have something to discard it with, discard immediately. So all of these cards being drawn, both players now, with both of their decks potentially just running at maximum efficiency, are just going to go right for each other's throats. Hellscreamer has already hit that magic number of 12, and it's only a matter of time before Sorry gets the Farons. It's almost guaranteed now with double Hexcore in play.
Sejuani comes in after the fact on the Ezreal, which is a pretty big deal. You can, of course, still kill the Sejuani with, you could have Mystic Shot and then Flock. But it looks like you're going to get the kill on the Peddler instead here and just let Ezreal die. I guess, yeah, Ezreal will die anyway because of the vulnerable.
So let Ezreal die, get, just get your Tri-Beam down, fight for tempo, fight for board. You have unit advantage. I think Sorry at this point recognizes I just need to not fall too far behind and just let the Hexcore Foundries work against my opponent to get my win condition in my hand.
Still no mushrooms though, so not really getting some passive damage. thanks to these Hexcore founders, you're creating the setup, but you're not getting the payoff. So obviously it's a problem, I think, for Hellscreamer's win condition. If Sejuani levels up, that could be massive. I'm not sure she'll make it without dying. We'll have to find out if there's enough ways to prevent her from dying. But these shrooms, they count as Nexus damage. So every different turn, if you're drawing shrooms, even if you're not attacking the Nexus, that's still, a ping of damage that Sejuani is benefiting from.
And so now Sari is thinking, do I want to develop Ezreal here that's leveled up? Do I want to Scorched Earth this Sejuani right now? Or do I want to wait? When we look at Sejuani's level up progress, I think she was 3 out of 5.
Yeah, it wasn't as the first few turns with Teemo dying that we saw at the very beginning with the beam. It hasn't leveled up too much time. So I think, yeah, it's going to be probably 3 out of 5 right now.
Really unfortunate as well that Hellscreamer wasn't able to get those Puffcat Peddlers to get set up. Those are really the huge workhorses of the deck, because once they get down and you have your mana filled up on the next round, for example, if your opponent does put a removal spell for them on the stack, you just dump your hand and get so many mushrooms into the opponent's deck. So here we go. Sorry, now with leveled up Ezreal in play, all of the removal spells are just going to be whittling down Hellscreamer's HP, and they are just, I think, within spitting distance. If we just count the number of spells in hand, I think it's lethal with this Ezreal here.
The Flash Freeze comes in, not gonna do much other than just block that 2 damage. The Sejuani now gonna be at flock range next turn, gonna be at 4 HP. If there's any kind of defense from a Troll Chan, there's gonna be a Mystic Shot as well to follow up. So quite a few different options here, and a Tri-Beam still in hand for Sari, which is going to be, I'm going to guess, pretty high. It was there from the very beginning, so it should be at 4 or 5 damage.
And again, looking at the hand, Sari, it's not just about making sure you discard the right card. You have to make sure you have the lethal. I think that they're also taking the time to just calculate here and make sure they actually do have the lethal. They're going to discard the Ballistic Bot and then just draw here.
I don't think there's any removal that can take down Ezreal. There's Get Exciteds in the deck for Hellscreamer, but other than that, there's no beams, there's no other kind of, there's a few missed shots as well, so you can still have the chance to kill Ezreal here.
Oh, and so here we go, leveled up Ezreal coming down from Hellscreamer's side, and again, the strength of Hellscreamer's list potentially is the fact that their Ezreal has more tools to operate at burst speed. So we'll see how much damage this Ezreal can do. Yeah,
I think this could be Get Excited into Mystic Shot, and now we'll see with 5 mana if Sari has enough to take down. He's missing obviously the 2 damage from the Tri-Beam if his Ezreal dies off before it resolves. But we'll see if Hellscreamer has the right answers. He only 6 mana, so he has to have Mystic Shot and Get Excited, or Troll Chan rather.
So both players now just playing it very, very safely, right? There's the Mystic Shot. Sends it on the Ezreal, doesn't send it to the Nexus. So yeah, I think that's going to be GG. That's not enough damage output to clear the Ezreal. There's the second Mystic Shot now, and Sari just needs to put spells on the stack here. So you've got the Mystic Shot hitting here for 4, and then Ravenous Flock as well being put on the stack. So that is going to be lethal. We had the Ezreal showdown, but unfortunately Hellscreamer just wasn't able to get enough damage onto Sari's Nexus leading up to this point.
Yeah, Sari's Ezreal is the faster draw here, and the biggest thing was the kind of the HP differences in going into this round. It was 15 HP for Sari, 8 HP for Hellscreamer, so much more vulnerable, even though both Ezreals were, of course, just as threatening. But Sari takes game 3, takes the series, survives, and stays alive in this tournament. Hellscreamer put up a very good fight, but ends up going down. And this is a loser's bracket, so this is, do or die moment. So Hellscreamer is out of this tournament, and Sari still has a chance to try and maybe defend his crown that he won last week.
And, big shout out to Hellscreamer for sure for bringing a really interesting deck. I think that, finding the right mixture of the Teemo Sejuani package and then the Frostbite Ezreal package, I think that there's something there for sure. And once that gets optimized, who knows if Ezreal will show it back on the scene as the old true win condition that he used to be, as I believe you've said previously, Panda, that the Ezreal Draven list is really just a Captain Farron deck, right? But looking at the resolution of that last set, we're going to take a look at the rest of the bracket now. We've got Fly actually managing to defeat MrBear 2-1, and so they are going to be the opponent of Sorry in the next set to see which one of them goes up against Salty Simon in the losers finals.
And Fly trying to finally make a name for UK, trying to get them into the top 3. They've been trying. We had a few different UK players in the past few Fight Night iterations. None of them have been able to make too big of a splash onto at least into the podium. So hopefully Fly is trying to change that. He has to face Sorry though in the next match, a very hard opponent, and then Simon is waiting in the losers bracket final as well. So a difficult road ahead of both of these players. We're gonna take a small break and we'll be back in just a bit. So stay tuned.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight Night Legends EU. We are almost done working our way through the losers bracket, and we have our next match set up between Fly and Sorry. Sorry, as you'll recall, was last week's winner, returning here to try to get that back-to-back championship.
Yeah, and Fly is someone that you guys may know from Fight Night itself. He has played before, but he also, made a big name for himself in the EU Masters tournament representing UK. He is Polish, but he was living in the UK. That UK team was a bit of I think none of them were actually from the UK. I think Matthew Foles was in Mexico during the tournament, so just a bit of a mix-up there. But Fly is, I believe, currently living in the UK, representing Poland, though, of course. And we'll see what he can do here. I mentioned it. The UK players, or the players living in UK, however you want to say it, have not really shown up in the past few tournaments, with Matthew Folks not doing too great. Spikes as well, I think, was in the last week's tournament. So hopefully Fly can change that and make it through to the top three. And he has to beat Sorry, though. It's going to be a hard one here from Lebanon. We saw him win last week, like you mentioned, and has been playing very strongly and also has just great established decks that are proven to win tournaments.
And Sorry, the only reason they're in the losers bracket anyway is they were unfortunately matched against Ranu, and this player has just been dominating the bracket and is running a lineup that potentially runs parallel and counter to that tried and true Fioreshen Ezreal Draven. And sometimes that's the only edge you need. So going into this next set of decks, Sorry maybe has a bit more of an even keel in order to swing this back into their favor and get that run back and that matchup that they're looking for. We're going to take a closer look at Fly's decks for this tournament. They brought scouts, actually the only player to bring scouts to this week's fight night.
And Scouts, of course, a very strong deck on ladder. I've been seeing it a lot in the past few weeks. And with Grand Plaza, it changes the deck a little bit. You're not playing as much for kind of the tempo for the board. And you are, of course, still playing for the level ups, but it makes it that much easier with Misfortune and with Quinn because you have the challenge on your scout unit. So you can really, with Misfortune on the board, you can, challenge a 1 health unit and then just get the easy kills and the easy you clear your opponent's board basically. And the biggest thing still, the win condition is going to be, of course, leveling up MF, leveling up Quinn. If your opponent doesn't have an answer for them, they can be almost an insta win once they do level up, and Sithri, of course, at the top end.
Now, leveling up, as you said, leveling up Misfortune is a key win condition, and there's a few considerations in this deck to enable that. We've got the triple Ranger's Resolve, fantastic for just disabling your opponent's removal. They think that they're going to get a good trade or a good removal spell. You're going to make them work that much harder to remove those units. This version notably has Pool Shark as one of its 1-drops. This is just a small mathematical edge for the deck where you slightly increase the chance of being able to get that Grand Plaza or that Misfortune for round 3. Getting those cards on curve is so important to the deck functioning at its strongest. And this is just going to be something that hopefully, pans out for Fly here.
It's a card that, just shows how powerful Plaza and Misfortune, having them on turn 3, is that you're open to including a card like Pool Shark into the deck. And it's a card that also benefits a lot from Plaza because going from 1 attack to 2 attack is a big jump. You're doubling your attack. So having that 1 drop, allowing for that as a challenging unit with Grand Plaza on the board is also more than okay, which is why I think it's fine to include it here as well. Biggest thing that's missing there is there's no double trouble, there's no jailbreak, so there's no really Blinding Soul is the only spell that's going to be synergizing with Grand Plaza. So sometimes you have to play Plaza on 3, you have attack token, you can't really benefit from it, but when you're running some of the spells, you're able to do that. So Blinding Soul at least is able to benefit from that Grand Plaza.
I think that anybody who's been playing the game regularly in the chat right now is very familiar with how dangerous this deck can get once they get set up on board and how hard it is to take the board back from them. We saw previously that if your decks don't have the proper landmark removal, you can get punished very heavily. And we'll see how it pans out against Fioreshen, which I think notably has been a pretty even matchup, and into Ezreal Draven. It's a lot sharper. Depends a lot more on your early game and your early answers, but both players are going to take it pretty conservatively here, and it's actually just going to be a nice, clean Ezreal Draven mirror to start off.
I like the but there. We go into a 10-minute analysis of a fun deck we haven't seen yet with scouts, and then it's just an Ezreal Draven mirror to start things off. So all that work for nothing. We're gonna go back to square one. We just saw this, 17 times this tournament, but Ezreal Draven is a strong deck, and it has very few weaknesses. It allows the player to really outmaneuver their opponents throughout a variety of different matchups, which is why it's so popular in tournaments, kind of similar to Heimer Vi in some ways. And a few patches ago, I think a lot of very good players decide, hey, this deck has no real huge loses in any the matchup, so I'm going to decide to bring it to the tournament instead. And right away, Sorry opens up with House Spider turn 2 and gets that 3 chip damage in.
Very important here, and Fly actually opts for the Draven here. You don't want to play out the Ezreal early in this matchup because the chance of it dying immediately is just so high, and you'd rather just let the Draven tank that for you. So going to be getting answered by the Thermogenic Beam. This opens up Sorry for another 3 damage open attack, and they already puts them so far ahead in this mirror.
Static Shock can kill one of the spiders and damage the other, but yeah, not ideal here, and no real great 3 or 4 drops to answer once that Draven dies. He has to maybe play to get excited onto the Chump Wump. So not an ideal hand for Fly to start things off. No Tri-Beam either for either player. So yeah, less than ideal.
Potentially, you could just play out an Ezreal here now that your opponent's mana's tapped out. Since you have 2 in hand, you could maybe just block one of the spiders with the other. And then get excited to Chump Wump. Could be one line of play. You have the Spinning Axe from your Draven previously that you can use as discard fodder. But you have to, something has to be developed here. This is way too much damage to take so early in the game.
Yeah, I'm fine with playing Ezreal blocking the 1/1 and get exciting the Chump Wump like you mentioned. Instead, yeah, going for the riskier player, going to take 6. Could still get excited onto the Chump Wump. I believe we will be seeing that. And yeah, Tri-Beam is great, so pays off there going for the Static Shock, and now can play, get excited, get the counter onto the Tri-Beam, and still have the Ezreal doing the same thing next turn possibly.
Very nice. Yeah, so taking a riskier line to go for a top deck into something that's answerable. And what this is going to do is it sets up your Ezreal to be a little bit safer here since it's not damaged, and it turns your other Ezreal into a Mystic Shot, which if this Ezreal survives, that's actually going to pay dividends for you down the road. So now with the Tri-Beam and Probulator in hand, Fly could look to stabilize, and in the key stages of the later game, could swing back into the favor with a key 4 damage or 5 damage in Probulator.
And if there isn't an open attack next turn, you can also just play House Spider and provide 2 great chump blockers to stop this assault from the spider that's already on the board for Sorry, and the possible Sum Treasure that will come down now.
And now Sorry is in a bit of a predicament, right? There's really no good answers to play out right now. You can just cycle one of the mushrooms, but with no way to block this Ezreal, whatever you play is going to take the hit from this Mystic Shot potentially.
And there's a swing here from Fly. No real answer here, of course. Ezreal's not damaged either, so no kind of no one turn spell can just kill the Ezreal before it hits the Nexus. A free Mystic Shot here as well to use, and you're gonna want to use it if you are Fly. Usually there's this mental game of passing when he has a Mystic Shot, because then it vanishes and you don't get to use it. But in this case, he's going to go for it, get the kill on the spider, and now Sorry, of course, is free to play whatever he wants. Then it won't be damaged by this Mystic Shot.
So both players again just wrestling for tempo. Sorry had a really strong start with the House Spider, but now Fly looks to be stabilizing things quite a bit. Notably, Fly's version is packing the Get Exciteds, which are so important for answering the enemy Dravens or the enemy Ezreals and stuff. It's a tech card that slowly worked its way out of the list, but might start seeing more consideration, especially with the ballistic bots providing more discard fodder for it.
Another Ezreal drawn. So 2 Mystic Shots could take down the Sum Treasure, but you're not playing into the Tri-Beam by playing these Mystic Shots, and maybe you're just fine taking the 4 damage here. Obviously, House Spiders would have loved to play them before this attack and then have just the chump blockers that way, but deciding to maybe even sacrifice the Ezreal here.
I really like the sacrifice here. Since you have all 3 Ezreals, you can just sacrifice it, maybe play the second one to open up the Mystic Shot to clear this, or you use the Scorched Earth, and this just gives you more and more procs for the Tri-Beam and Probulator. I think that Fly at this point needs to just go all in on this. With Captain Farron, waiting in the wings. It's just a matter of trying to keep yourself healthy.
And trying to go for max 3, this beam also at 3 is going to help with the tri-beam as well. If he can get the tri-beam to 8, then he'll feel very, very comfortable going into the 8-mana turn. And it's definitely a possibility. It should already be at, I believe, 4 or 5 already.
And once you get it stacked up, like beyond, 3, it answers everything except Captain Farron. And so if you can live the dream to allow your tri-beam to completely flip the script against a Captain Farron played against you, it's just utterly fantastic. So Ravenous Flock comes down. Both players, you can see how tight this game is so far, how close that this is. Both players are tapping out. Normally in these Ezreal Draven mirrors, we've seen the players play very passively. They want to float mana. They want to save the resources in hand, but both players are just spending all of their cards and all of their resources trying to fight for a tempo advantage and a board advantage here. Notably, Fly does not have the key attack token on round 8.
And yeah, this Ezreal I think cannot come down this turn. It would be the 3rd Ezreal for Fly. It's not leveled up yet, and I think you want to save it until you have the chance to really get some burst damage with it at least. I think you're maybe fine passing here. Yeah, you have the better Ezreal game plan right now. You have the Farron in hand. You have a very strong tri-beam as well, so you're happy with just playing passively and kind of reacting to your opponent's plays at this point. So this is completely fine, I think, if you're Fly.
And so here it is, the tri-beam Improbulator.
It's gonna be on 6, I believe it was. Not bad.
Swiftwing Lancer. So that was 5 damage, and this is fantastic, right? Swiftwing Lancer, a 5 attack challenger unit, is going to be beautiful at not only answering units, but 4 HP is surprisingly difficult for this deck to deal with without using an additional card, right? And then once it dies, you get another unit, so that's additional value. And Fly, again, just opting for the tri-beam here to save Captain Farron for next round when they have the attack token to swing in with it too.
Sorry did draw his own tri-beam, but he drew it last turn, so it's not going to have any, probably just no counters on it whatsoever right now. So not going to be able to answer back in the tempo game here. And there's a Farron in hand for Fly, no Farron for Sorry. And next turn will be, attack token turn for Fly. So I think you're fine passing here if you're Fly. Still, you have a advantage on the board right now. You're going to have attack token next turn on turn 8. Your opponent has no beam in hand either. And his tri-beam isn't activated to kill the Farron and doesn't have a Farron to answer back. So you're fine here. Your Ezreal's already leveled up. So if it comes to burst speed kills with Ezreal, you're already, pretty much there.
It's really bizarre to see how I had just mentioned how aggressively the players are spending their mana and resources. And then for that to suddenly grind to a halt due to Fly having the win conditions already lined up in hand. And for Sorry, their hand is very reactive. So they're just passing because they don't need to develop or have anything to develop. So now, with the Mystic Shot onto the Captain Farron, the Scorched Earth is going to answer this beautifully. You don't want to take this 8 overwhelm damage, of course. And so now Fly is thinking about their next move.
I think he's well aware that this Farron will be dying. And he's thinking about going for pass here. Yeah, he has to react here. He can't just pass again. He has to play Guillotine here. There's not going to be any more damage units, so there's not going to be any big benefit on this Guillotine the rest of the turn here. But Sorry couldn't continue passing there. He had to, react and play more proactively there. And now Fly has a better idea of what to play around. But I think he knew that either Guillotine or Scorched Earth was coming in this turn.
Ooh, I love this play. Because they waited for the Guillotine, that means Sorry doesn't have mana for like a Captain Farron or anything like that. And now, look at this. With the Ravenous Flock clearing this unit, another resource is being forced out of Sorry to not take this damage.
I'm able to use a second Guillotine now without having to, lose any cards. So great if you're looking at this game going, quite a bit longer. You want to have max cards possible. And you get 2 ticks also on this Tri-beam. So Tri-beam now up to 3 or 4 damage on Sorry.
Rummaging away. And what do we get here? Ballistic Bot, Static Shock, not bad, but at this point in the game, you really need the Captain Farron to seal the deal. And with the Swiftwing Lancer going down, I forgot to take a look at what card they got. Vanguard Redeemer's not bad either. Now, remember that Vanguard Redeemer specifically says draw a unit, so that could be very helpful for actually getting a blocker, a body out of the deck as well.
And now Fly has Decimates, and there isn't really any pressure right now coming in from Sari, so he has a chance to play these Decimates if he wants. Ezreal is leveled up, but I think it's too risky to play. I think I'm going to try and play him out at the end of the turn, especially with the Decimates being slow speed. You can't really, make use of them on the stack either. So I think you want Sari to maybe commit a lot of his mana this turn. Just play out your Decimates, save 3 mana, unit mana as well, and play Ezreal at the very end of the turn. And then next turn you have a chance to play fast speed and try and get a burst or a kill onto the Nexus that way.
I definitely agree with that. Sump Dredger coming down. Vanguard Redeemer is not active. You need a unit to die. And because it came from the Swiftwing Lancer, it hadn't seen anything die yet, a really very specific interaction there. But this Tri-Beam, you mentioned, it already was able to get stacked up nicely because of the Guillotine, and so you get a nice 4-mana 6/6.
Now, Ezreal is tempting here still, but there could still be something like a beam that we do see in hand for Sari here. So we'll see if Sari wants to commit more mana, and then there's going to be a green light for Fly to play this Ezreal.
Fly is taking this very, very passively, trying to wait as long as they can before they commit this Ezreal to try to make it safe. And I think Sari might be sniffing this out. Doesn't want to spend any more mana here. Needs to keep this beam threat open against the Ezreal, because we saw it in the previous game, right? The 4 HP on a leveled up Ezreal, you have to have something specific like doubled up Mystic Shot. Most of your removal is like spaced out where you have to damage the unit first. So when you're fighting against a card like Ezreal that's putting damage on the stack and is damaging you at, fast and burst speed, it's such a headache for this list to deal with when all of your answers just aren't fast enough.
Tempting, but this is the last Ezreal as well for Fly, so he has to be very careful with what he commits and when he does commit it. I think it's safer to go for the Decimate here. You're maybe losing out on 1 damage by not playing Ezreal first, but it's much safer. And if Sari goes for something like the Static Shock here, which isn't a great tempo play at this point in the game, goes for the beam instead, and now Ezreal is very safe. At 4...
The prophecy was fulfilled. You said it waiting until the end of the turn so that Ezreal is safe, and it opens you up for the next round to have all of your mana available to machine gun with this bad boy.
And you can't kill it with Scorched Earth on the stack if there's an open attack here, just onto the Nexus, which I think there probably will be. You can play Chump Pump first, though, just to get all that burst speed spells as well for Rummage.
Yeah, potentially you can, you play the Chump Wump. You can even cast the mushrooms at burst speed, maybe rummage away the ignition in one of the Scorched Earths if you want to be really greedy and efficient. We've seen it time and time again where 1 or 2 chip damage from mushrooms can make or break a game. And I wonder if Fly, you recall earlier in the game, took that riskier line of drawing with Static Shock, might be wanting to take a little bit more risks in this match with mushrooms helping them finish off the opponent.
I think you're very happy here. You're guaranteeing 2 damage from Ezreal right now. You have 8 damage with the Decimates. We talked about no healing in Ezreal Drain, which is a huge thing going to the next turn. If you're able to just do 2 damage now with burst speed spells and then have still a Decimate played this turn, you're pretty much going to win next turn. If a Farron's played next turn, then you have the chance to just play Decimate in response.
And this, again, is just such a big issue for the deck. Ezreal's been damaged, but everything that you need to kill Ezreal is fast speed, and you just put everything on the stack here in front of that removal spell, so it resolves first. And this is going to be it, right? You've got the Mystic Shot, and then you just rummage into another rummage, or even just with the ignition, I think it's good to go. Fly taking the time to crunch the numbers, feel out the options here. Sends their Mystic Shot onto the Ezreal, onto the enemy Ezreal. Not feeling confident in the damage output here.
Well, the only thing he's scared about now, especially with his hand state, is that Ezreal kills him, right? Anything else, he just plays Decimate next turn for 4 damage. So he wants to have the chance to, just kill the Ezreal, because that's the only threat to him, and then just, this is the safest way to do it. Next turn, what's going to kill you at 12 HP with nothing on the board right now? Nothing. I mean, you play Farron, you just instantly Decimate, and there's no threat of losing, basically. It's just the safest avenue to do it. So, again, the hand isn't really scary for Sari because he only has 2 cards, and there's the surrender from Sari. And game 1 will go to Fly. I think very well played, very patient with that Ezreal last turn. I was talking about it as well. And the beam on the 5 mana beam onto the 2/3 elusive, I think was the nail in the coffin there. A lot of mana wasted. Maybe when you're so far behind, you have to start making riskier plays if you're Sari. So I understand why he did it, but it allowed Fly to just develop the Ezreal and then have the pretty easy time in this last turn.
Being so far ahead as well with your Ezreal development, with just the tempo, right? This matchup is so important in getting that tempo. But now we're going to see Ezreal Draven versus Scouts. And again, Sari's variant does have a couple Scorched Earths. So there is a little bit of a fighting chance here.
In the Scouts list, we talked about it before. It really wants to have Plaza or MF on turn 3. There's going to be no attack token here for Fly on turn 3. There's the MF, though, very important, and a nice 1-drop as well, where typically Ezreal Draven doesn't have any 1-drop, so just a free open attack possibly next turn without any Mystic Shot as well to answer.
And you could go greedy here. Yeah, just go for the Bright Steel Protector. This way, your opponent is further stifled in their development, where they don't want to give you a free body into that challenger, and then 5 damage right off of the bat. So this is a fantastic curve for Fly right now. The 1-drop into the 2-drop, and now we've got Misfortune on 3. And with the second Misfortune in hand, you don't mind playing this at all. Fly floats. I love that.
Yeah, with her post as well. Now you have the chance to protect Misfortune if you need to. There's not really any threats right now. From Sari, he doesn't have really the right spells to take it down, but there's a House Spider just to provide chump blockers, maybe get some damage units for Scorched Earth to be online going to next turn, but also a 1 HP unit that's going to die very easily to that Fleet Feather Tracker.
This is devastating. This always feels so terrible when you have a 1 HP unit that just gets dragged into combat to die to the love tap.
This is maybe a Make It Rain, a cheeky Make It Rain play, hoping to hit the 2/2 and then getting the cleanest possible. But I'm not sure if it's the way to go here with the current hand of your Fly.
I think Fly has already demonstrated that they're willing to take some crazy percentages. And no, okay, so they're just going to sacrifice the Fleet Feather Tracker. Okay, I think actually. No, the Make It Rain would resolve before the double tap. You don't get the guarantee there. But again, with Misfortune getting a way to just bully your opponent, force them to trade, use their resources when you have more cards in hand, I think that Fly is playing a double-pronged attack of fighting for tempo while simultaneously draining their opponent of cards and resources.
And Sari had the Farron in hand, discards it with the Rummage to make space for something that can do more right now, because Scouts is a deck that plays very quickly, and if you're not able to defend, if Misfortune flips, if there's a lot of pressure already at 14 HP, you have to be very careful in the mid game. Right now, Tribeam was there from very early on, so that's going to be maybe the one saving grace that can maybe just take on an MF and have a big tempo swing as well with a good unit on the board.
The only defense they really have for MF is if you do something slow, they can use Bright Steel Protector or just the barrier from Riposte, but Draven Ezreal doesn't really care about barriers that much, obviously. And now with Misfortune number 2 coming down, this is still pretty awkward.
And the Sharp Sight top deck was huge, obviously, for this turn especially. Ezreal can't not attack. I think you have to attack. You have to assume there's no Sharp Sight. But once it is there, it'll be a huge shutdown on the Ezreal as well.
And Fly might be thinking of something really bizarre where you could just let the Ezreal hit you and just wait for them to Mystic Shot your 3/2. They might even kill the Fleet Feather Tracker, for example. There's a weird world where, the Valor plus Misfortune just clear the Ezreal as well, depending on how risky you want to play it.
So what the answer is here, there's a Riposte still as well to protect Misfortune if it comes to that, if there's kind of a 2-card combo. Yeah, that might be it. So I assume we'll see it's going to resolve here.
So if you're sniffing out like the Ravenous Flock or something, you could go for the riposte immediately to keep Misfortune from being damaged.
Mm-hmm.
And it would force them to use another spell to damage Misfortune for Scorched Earth or Ravenous Flock, for example, to connect. Because Scorched Earth, is just, if the unit's damaged, it's dead, right? And so by letting that Mystic Shot go through, I think this does signify that Fly is going to be pretty aggressive this round. You could even go for the Sharp Sight if the Ezreal swings in, and it would heal the Misfortune, so to speak.
Not a great, I mean, it's not looking great for Scouts right now. I think it just wasn't fast enough. There's double Tri-Beam as well. It's going to be a huge swing on the board. And there's Riposte is great, but you're not even on attack tokens. So you can't make use of the actual attack buff either. And you're trading 1 mana for 4, or 3 mana for 4 rather, with the Mystic Shot as well. But these are spells that are targeting as well. They're helping Ezreal level up as well. So the hand is looking a bit low for Sorry, because he had to discard. I think he discarded the Fair, and he discarded actual cards with a Rummage. So his hand state isn't looking too great, but does Fly have enough of a threat next turn? With Scorched Earth being an answer to Misfortune still.
Yeah, it definitely felt bad to use Riposte on the against the Mystic Shot, but now with Misfortune, even though she's living here, a damaged unit facing down against Ezreal Draven is just, their days are numbered. And without something really strong like Quinn or Island Navigator, for example, to get a wide aggressive board against this, it's going to be trouble. And there it is off the top. So now we've got some damage and a Bark Beast. That's a sweet 1-drop. So from this position, we do maybe have a Tri-Beam Improbulator. This is going to kill 1 unit and summon another unit, which is fantastic. Even out this board as much as possible.
That being said, it's the only play that you can make here if you're Sorry. Because of the 6 mana exactly, it makes things quite awkward where you can't play both Draven and an Improbulator, or a Scorched Earth and an Improbulator. Dawn Speakers, interesting card. Obviously no Misfortune ping here, so it will be surviving. Both of these, the Island Navigator and the 3-drop from the Tri-Beam, both not maybe as ideal as you would like, but it did level up. The Bark Beast will level up. Got the buff thanks to the MF kill that you had to make if you were Sorry, because it's going to get close to leveling up if not.
And there is potential here for Fleet Feather plus Sharp Sight to just get this Ezreal out of the way. But I like this line of play as well, where instead of pulling the Ezreal, you're saving the Fleet Feather Tracker for when you have a better target that you want to pull to the side. And theoretically, you're threatening enough damage where your opponent might feel they need to trade the Ezreal or at least chump block with it.
And this could be a pursuit, and this could be lethal. I mean, there's nothing that Sorry can do. Of course, Fly doesn't know this, but this mana is 2 mana that's not really there for Sorry. You're going to drag the Ezreal to the side. You're going to have, with the Bark Beast actually coming in extremely clutch with a 3 health for just being a 1-drop, even without Grand Plaza, and that's lethal for Fly. So a very odd game, but completely locked out of plays because he just had... Yeah, just very awkward.
Both players are just scraping the bottom of the barrel looking for the best lines of play there. And a deck that can play 1 action to summon 2 units is just so powerful when both players are still jockeying for position and the game hasn't gone really one way or the other without Grand Plaza. It all comes down to just having that board presence and the tempo there.
The biggest thing is that the 3-drop from Tri-Beam was terrible, and the 1-drop was so good that you were able to survive with a 3-drop. It had 3 attack as well, and you're able to use Relentless Pursuit, so you're able to double up on that difference there. And there wasn't a blocker there because the 1 attack didn't kill anything, so you were able to trade units. So very unfortunate for Sorry there, of course. His hand state as well, having only 1 play to make the entire game. Tri-Beam was the play to make because it's kind of a 2-for-1 in terms of providing blockers, but yeah, just very unfortunate results there from the Tri-Beam, and very fortunate from the Navigator.
When games are even, when the stakes are high, a little bit of RNG is usually what decides things, and it is unfortunate, but it is a card game. We're going to get a quick update on the bracket as well, just to fill everyone in, with Fly going 2-0 against Sorry, last week's winner. They are now going to be facing the second place from last week, Salty Simon, to take on Ranu. So this is really exciting. Again, you said Fly has been working their way up the bracket, trying to make a name for the UK scene, now taking down the first and second place winners from last week to go up against the new dark horse in Ranu, who has risen up to take them down and send them to the losers bracket as well. So really exciting matchup looks like might be taking shape here for our grand finals.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break, but we'll be back with Fly against Simon in just a little bit. And then, obviously, of course, the grand finals coming up after that. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Mhm. Yeah, we haven't seen a few of them. I mean, maybe just like confirmation bias, like you look.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight Night Legends EU. You are just in time to see us move on to the losers finals to see who's going to take on Ranu. Fly has been working their way up through the losers bracket this whole time. Recently just took down Sorry, last week's winner, and is now up against Salty Simon, the last week runner-up. Now, this player was also dominating the upper half of the bracket and was knocked down by Ranu. So both of these players are looking for some glory and some nice grudge matches potentially coming up here soon. We're going to take a closer look at the decks that they chose to bring to this tournament.
And Ezreal Draven is a deck that both players have chosen to bring. So we're going to compare them as well, see what the differences are, and what reasons players might have to bring certain cards, certain tech cards, and not bring others. Looking at this deck here, we're going to see right away. It is, I believe, if it has 3 Captain Farron, it's going to be Simon's deck. We saw it maybe being a bit too top heavy in one of the first games we saw on the stream, but overall, I think it's a card that wins games in many matchups, and you want to have a high chance of finding it early. We'll see if that ends up affecting his hand state at some points in time. If not, or not. But no chump bumps. Ballistic Bot kind of took over that role for Simon, and no Scorched Earth. Guillotine instead. So not really worried about any landmarks. That was a problem against Ranu that we saw in the winners final, but in this case, in this matchup, it shouldn't be a problem. Actually, it will be, because Fly has Scouts and he has Grand Plaza.
So the lack of landmark removal actually rearing its ugly head once again for Salty Simon. Again, just the ability of the list to run either or of Noxie and Guillotine, usually a little bit of both, really does help its flexibility for a lot of different matchups. And you can tell that Salty Simon had tweaked this version because they were only expecting specific decks, right? The triple Captain Farron is really strong in the mirror match because you want to guarantee that you have Captain Farron as much as possible on that key 8-mana turn to play it down and get that decimate pressure going. And then you don't really need Scorched Earth in theoretically non-landmark matchups. The fleeting Noxie and Guillotine has always been a favorite of the Ezreal Draven players because you can discard the fleeting copy to draw with Rummage or Sump Dredger, or each individual cast of it does stack up your Tri-Beam Improbulator.
We're going to check out the other Ezreal Draven list from Fly. We just saw him get that win over Sorry in the last match, and the deck, again, is not going to be too different. It's going to have 1 Chump Wump, which was the addition, and 1 less Ballistic Bot, I believe it is. And it does have 2 Scorched Earths, so a few more spells, a few more differences there in the spells, and some Get Excited as well, which with Ballistic Bot makes sense. You're not losing on having to discard a card, and you have that fast speed 3 damage without having to rely on the unit being damaged, which is the case for Guillotine and Scorched Earth usually.
And what Get Excited does for this matchup, if you're considering the mirror, is it gives you that really sweet 3 damage you want against the Sump Dredger, against the Ezreal, against an early, against a Draven or a Chump Wump, right? And by having that style of answer, you are able to keep your opponent from getting too far ahead of you in terms of tempo. You can keep the board evened out, perhaps, as you work towards the late game, or sometimes you just want that extra little bit of burn damage.
That's exactly it. And as for the other 2 decks, we just saw Fly with his Scouts deck have a very, very fortunate pull from Island Navigator and winning that game 2 against Sorry. But for Simon's deck, maybe you guys don't remember, we haven't seen him for a little bit, it is going to be Fiora Shen, so nothing too exciting. This is the lineup. I believe he brought this exact lineup to the last tournament, and Sorry did as well. and they both made it to the final. So it's a lineup that's been proven to find success. Two very strong decks that have been very strong in Fiora Shen's case for a very, very long time. And I believe Simon is someone that has also just plays on ladder as well, so he has this deck completely mastered.
And the mastery of Fiora Shen just goes to show, right, that there is still, despite its strength, a lot of learning to do with the deck. It needs to adapt to various matchups. Notably, this version has dropped the Nopifies. Because you aren't really considering go hard anymore. The lack of Nopify does make it a bit weaker into other Ezreal Draven lists, for example. But we see the Captain Arika tech in there. This is great for the mirror match, just to answer your opponents like Bright Steel Formation or Captain Farron, for example. So overall, the list still maintains its well-rounded and just generally strong potential, and that's really what you want in a tournament deck, especially in a meta like this, where it's sort of settled down and sort of, quote unquote solved. And we'll see if, piloting a lineup 2 weeks back to back, if that experience is what it's going to take to bring this win home.
And we're into game one. It's an Ezreal Draven mirror with both players playing House Spider on turn 2. Turn 3, both players will probably play either one player will play Draven, and then we'll see a Sentry into Flock to answer. But no Tri-Beams in hand yet, which is an important thing to look out for in these matchups. Obviously, you want to find the Tri-Beam before playing your 3-drops. The respectful pass here from both players going straight into the next round.
And both players, again, happy to take that pass. It's either goes one way or the other, where both decks draw very slowly and the matchup plays out very passively, or both decks draw out their early game and then suddenly they're just off to the races immediately, fighting for tempo. So now we have Draven getting answered by Sentry and Flock, that being answered back by the Mystic Shot. Both players now, after a flurry of spells, left with just spiders in play, and they're going to trade those in too.
We're back to square one. No one has done any damage, and there's a 1 mana advantage for Simon at least. He's 1 card down, though. I think he's targeted twice, so the Ezreal level up is a bit closer for him. But overall, this is mirrors. It tends to happen where now it's going to be the opposite. Now one player plays Draven, the next player plays Sentry into Flock. And as we go along until we reach turn 8, and we'll see a Farron come down, and then hopefully Fly draws his Farron in that time, or else he might lose the game.
Panda has infiltrated the Matrix. He's seeing into the future right now. He's laying out the entire matchup for us here. Tri-Beam being spent for tempo. 2 damage summons a 2/1. This is another aspect of the matchup that we see from time to time, where once the players start firing on all cylinders, immediately these Tri-Beams, I don't want to stack them up in my hand. I'm just going to use it for tempo and try to just beat my opponent down. Salty Simon managing to connect with 2 damage, draws first blood. We'll see if they can keep this pressure going.
Very unfortunate hand here from Simon. This is something that I love. When you have a very bad hand, you want to get the pass in and make your opponent think you're burning mana when really you couldn't make any plays anyways. And then, yeah, it worked out. Fly ends up going for the pass there, and Simon's terrible hand isn't really as punished as it could have been.
And so now we've got Ezreal in play. Get Excited is one of the cards that I mentioned is teched in order to deal with an early play like this. And you have to do something first. Cycle maybe with the Static Shock. You can clear the 2/1, damage the Ezreal, hope to top deck another Mystic Shot or maybe another Flock.
You could Sentry as well to just stop the Nexus Strike from the Ezreal here, which would be a big problem because Simon really wants to have that Mystic Shot to do damage, to be able to get the Guillotine activated, and to use up that spell mana that he got from his Tri-Beam drop.
So overall, really strong double value here.
Yeah, it stops the attack here, stops the Ezreal, of course, from doing anything. The
and
Flock draw as well.
So you can just sit on the Ravenous Flock and cash that in whenever you want, because there is no healing. So I think Fly takes this. Save the Flock for maybe later on. Nope, wants to keep their 3/2 in play. So Fly now sensing they have a slight advantage here with these bodies in play. And so Captain Farron now coming down. No attack token for Salty Simon's side, but setting up for a very strong open attack in any play. At any rate, and so leveled up Ezreal now coming down from Fly.
And this is completely fine. I mean, you have the mana to now get excited or to just beam the Fair into 7. Now you can kill it next turn with Guillotine, and your Ezreal's already leveled up. So the moment he's down, there's not really anything that can be done here by Simon to take it down. So, and this, you can attack with his Fair, but you know it's going to die. I mean, at this point, because of the way that Fly played, you're pretty sure that there's going to be some kind of spell that can kill this Fair in here. And I mentioned it before, there's no counterplay in Ezreal Draven. Once something's going to happen, you can't save it, you can't stop it from happening, really.
It comes down to allocating those resources very specifically for the right moment, because there is no way to prevent that from happening. So now we've got this extra damage coming in from leveled up Ezreal that's in play. Despite Salty Simon having the attack token, you're forced to open attack with the Farron, and now all of your mana is dedicated to these decimates coming through. But Fly is at 18 HP, and because every removal spell now translates to damage to your Nexus, Salty Simon is going to be struggling to actually get any threat set up here to get that final 6 damage they need.
And that's the nail in the coffin. It was a very fortunate second Sump Dredger drawn here to try and provide some kind of defense next turn on the open attack, but the Tri-Beam worked perfectly there. You get all the targeting spells as well with Ezreal on the floor. You can't kill Ezreal. Yeah, this open attack is really huge as well. And
the one of Chump Wump showing up just in time as well. You can play the Chump Wump, and then you have the 2 mushrooms that you can cast at burst speed when your opponent puts this on the stack. Now that the Static Shock is coming through to damage this Ezreal, that's the signal to Fly. My opponent has Guillotine, has Flock, has something to kill the Ezreal. So now everything I'm going to do is just on the stack now. Here's the double Mystic Shot, and there's the KO.
Yeah, no need for the Ezreal to survive either, which is why you don't play Chump Bump first. You know there's no healing, so there's nothing to play around. You just played both Mystic Shots and you win the game. At the end of the day there, Ezreal leveled up very strong when you don't have any answers. I think Simon had just a very awkward hand the entire game through. We saw that premature pass where he had 6 mana still saved up. He got spell mana from his Tri-Beam drop, but he had nothing to use it on, nothing effective at least. It was Guillotine without any damaged units, etc. So less than ideal hand for Simon there, and ends up losing the mirror because of it.
That was one of the few instances we've actually seen just a leveled up Ezreal being played somewhat early and just sticking around to close out the game. And it just goes to show that Ezreal is still a very potent win condition when the stars align. So now Salty Simon's going to remain on Ezreal Draven into Scouts. Now, I think, generally speaking, Ezreal Draven's ability to just keep the board clear and chump block with House Spiders, etc., is pretty strong into Scouts. But again, Salty Simon's version does not have Scorched Earth, so it is going to be pretty difficult to deal with this Grand Plaza on turn 3.
Pool Shark is drawn, but not needed. You have both Grand Plaza and Misfortune in the hand already, so the Pool Shark's job not needed in this game. But Misfortune really isn't going to have the greatest protection. She's going to get chipped down either with Static Shock and then with Flock, so she's going to go down pretty easily. In some matchups, you don't have the guarantee that Misfortune's going to end up dying, but in this one, it's pretty clear. I mean, Ezreal Draven is great at removing small units like Misfortune, so that shouldn't be a major problem for Simon.
And so here, Fly is just thinking about, do I want to trade into this 2/2? Do I want to take the damage? The board is looking really good right now. Your next turn is going to be an off turn where you want to establish the Grand Plaza. So maybe you do want to just get value out of this Fleet Feather Tracker. There is potential where you play 3 mana, don't do anything, and then your opponent just jumps out ahead of you with a Draven or a Static Shock. So I do like the trade there.
MF comes down, so you're no Grand Plaza just yet. You want to go for the MF first, try and get the level up, or at least the first counter on her this turn. He goes for it, only the Spider to block. Can't really do anything to damage here at least, which is a major thing, because obviously just having that one bit of damage on Misfortune opens her up to get killed by cards like Guillotine, for example. And Flock, of course.
So Salty Simon, I like that they just chumped with the Spider. Even though it dies for free, you save that 3 damage. But this is going to allow you to develop the Draven safely, because with Quick Attack, you can just threaten the Misfortune right back. Despite the Sharp Sight, despite the Ranger's Resolve, your opponent still has enough mana open where it's very tricky for you. And so now Grand Plaza comes down. We'll see how Simon reacts to this.
The Resolve will be fantastic at stopping, again, any kind of chip damage on Misfortune, like Static Shock, which means that she won't be damaged, which means Flock cannot do anything.
This version, again, of Scouts teched for this matchup has triple Ranger's Resolve. So Simon just has to go for the 5 damage on the Thermo in order to account for both of these if possible. You can go for Sharp Sight and Resolve, but that's going to leave a damaged Misfortune behind. And as we saw previously, Misfortune being damaged means that she's just easy pickings for the rest of what this deck has to offer. Just lets it go through.
Yeah, it's not worth saving, but your hand currently right now isn't looking like it has that many threats once Misfortune is dead to try and close out this game or to be, well, Quinn comes in now and that maybe changes things a little bit.
Quinn or Grizzled Ranger?
If you think Quinn level up is going to be your win condition at this point, then maybe you have to play Quinn this turn and not miss out on the attacks here.
Quinn does summon 2 units that plays around Arachnoid Sentry. With the Sharp Sight, with the Ranger's Resolve, you could still get a clean kill on this Draven. So I think this gives you the best potential threat. Grizzled Ranger is pretty strong there as well. It depends on what your opponent has. Right? Thermogenic Beam on the last round maybe indicates they don't have too much going on in their hand, and maybe that's why Fly commits to the Quinn here.
No Tribeam in hand for Simon, but he did have the very fortunate, Draven he has a rummage with all the axes, so he's able to really cycle through his deck pretty effectively. I'm surprised he hasn't done it yet, trying to maybe find a Tribeam before playing something like a Sentry. Maybe he thinks he needs the axes to try and take down these scout units when they do attack.
So I like this here. Again, even though you're stunning the Valor, you want to stun Valor so that Quinn is the one that attacks here. Quinn's going to be the one that takes the damage from this exchange, and this is going to allow Flock to clean her up. So Draven goes down, but when you're playing a matchup against Scouts, it is all about just survival, defense. And so Flock comes down, clears the Quinn, and both decks are doing what they want to do essentially in this matchup, and that favors Ezreal Draven.
That'll be a big top deck situation for Fly. If you find something like a Cythria or a second Misfortune, that could be massive. Obviously, Plaza, once you put it down on the board, is there forever, especially in this current matchup where there is no Scorched Earth. So that value is going to be there for the rest of the game, and that could be massive going forward. But Rummage comes out now. Farron is found. Ezreal's also found 2 big win conditions for Simon, and we'll see if Fly has what it takes to answer back.
I like the Pool Shark here. You get that extra +1/+1, so you have a nice 2/3 to chump the 3/2. And furthermore, you get that extra draw. At this point in the game, Fly needs to start looking for the top end of the deck, the Cythrias, in order to come through to help with this list, to get that punch through that it really wants. I think developing the Grizzle Ranger here definitely tells us the Relentless Pursuit's coming through, and Fly needs this to do a lot of work. You have the Grizzled Ranger being able to scoop up this 1/3 and still survive, and this is going to give you a really potent open attack potentially.
You want to be very careful with the use of Resolve. You want to use it preemptively, because once the damage comes through, then you can't do anything about it. Flock will be activated, for example. So we'll see what it ends up going for here. I'm going to go for the Scout trade here, and just try and probably just keep the other 2 units alive and just challenge with the Bears instead.
It is really risky to use the Valor to swing because of Static Shock or Mystic Shot even. So we could see maybe them just hedging the bets. 4/5 and the 2/1 swing face, and the 2/3 pulls the Ballistic Bot to the side. Ooh, so does go for this, decides to go in against the Flock.
I think with this current hand, you have to keep all your units alive if possible, and kind of play a bit safer, not just go for straight lethal damage, and maybe hope for a Cythria draw if you have a wide board. That's the ideal, but Static Shock here would be, of course, baited into Ranger's Resolve, and it'll keep the Fleet Feather Tracker alive, or the bird alive, so it'll be 2 damage to Nexus, and you get to keep that bird alive.
Yeah, because of Ranger's Resolve, the Static Shocks are pretty much a dead card. It's such a huge blowout when you basically play 4 mana draw a card against a tempo deck like this. And so by not preemptively assigning the Ranger's Resolve, the Loyal Badger Bear takes that damage, so it will go down to the Flock, and doesn't cast the Ranger's Resolve to save it either. Wants to just keep this alive for the Static Shock, I think. And there's, again, so many ways to just kill a damaged unit regardless. that sacrificing the Ranger's Resolve there probably doesn't feel worth it to fly.
There's the Ezreal coming down, 4 out of 6 counters on it, but 2 static shocks in hand, which means that it'll level up very, very easily. There's a sharp sight in hand though for Fly, so it can't be played this turn, which is the reason why Simons is swinging very freely here. But now he has to decide, is there going to be a chance that there is a sharp sight in hand for Fly? Do I have to play around it next turn? There's a Cythria. We talked about it being a very important top deck.
And so a 7/7 challenger is so enormous, and this is going to come down before Captain Farron is available, and there's nothing big enough to block this. Simon might be forced to commit a gigantic thermo beam, right? But it's too risky. If
you commit the beam, you're out of mana, and then you can just easily kill the Ezreal at this point. Is that a big problem? Maybe not when you have Farron next turn.
Yeah, with no guillotine or anything like that in hand, dealing with the 7/7 is just going to be a chore. Goes for the static shock. And there's the Ranger's Resolve. This could be it. Again, just 4 mana to draw a card. And as long as Fly takes this attack and doesn't get punished by the Sentry... Yeah, there we go. Even pulls the Ezreal, doesn't even pull it with the Cythria to kill it. Says, I'm going to go all in with my 15 HP, and I hope that I can deal this remaining 4 damage to you somehow. Oh, reconsidering. It is a tough call.
It is because, I mean, you can play Sharp Sight next turn, which means if Simon makes the mistake of attacking with Ezreal before maybe developing more, it might just die instantly, basically. And I mean, there's a static shock in hand, but yeah, going down to 4 damage, there isn't really much Scouts can do to just, without pursuit, to just create damage out of nowhere. It doesn't have any kind of burn in the deck for the most part, so it's not really that threatening to be on 4 if you're Simon. And now Simon has a chance to make an impactful turn now with Farron, for example, next turn.
Yeah, so the Thermo, again, just to get damage with the... onto the Cythria, and it comes down to this top deck. You have to get some way to remove this big unit, because it's just going to run you over. It's the perfect top end complement to this deck. You get the +1/+1 in Challenger onto a unit with fantastic stats already, plus an AoE attack buff when you attack, and then that just stacks on itself because of Scout. It's glorious, and this Cythria was so perfectly timed. I want to give a special huge shout out to Pool Shark enabling that extra draw.
We thought it was only there for Misfortune and Grand Plaza, but we were wrong. It's there for Cythria to find the top deck you need at the right time. Chance to end the round here if you're Fly. I have to imagine you're pretty okay with that. Your opponent's at 4 HP, you have a Cythria, you have a Scout. You have a Pursuit now as well, which makes it even scarier because you can protect your units with barriers when you have, you can pretty much play your entire hand here.
It's so hard to keep up. Once you fall behind against Scouts, it's so hard to get back into the game because they have these huge plays where they can summon a unit, protect it, or they play one unit that summons 2, like a Quinn or an Island Navigator. And when your spells aren't lining up against the Scout list the way you want them to remove the board, if you aren't top decking the bodies to keep up with that tempo, Ezreal Draven can really run out of gas in that regard. Salty Simon's only realistic play last round was just to commit all their mana to Captain Farron, and if Fly has Relentless Pursuit or something, you just get blown up. So now we've got the Bright Steel Protector even going down to protect this Shrimpy Challenger, so you have some of these bigger units to attack.
The Sentry comes down, stops the Challenger for 3. We're going to see a Grizzled Ranger come down with Scouts as well, with a barrier on the bird, so they can just clear out pretty much both the Ezreal and the Sentry, and then just going to be a full open attack. 9 mana still up for Simon, see if he has anything that he can do here. Guillotine is an answer onto the Cythria at the very least, but you can still develop. I mean, you have Pursuit, you have really everything you need now if you're Fly to with only 4 HP left on the Nexus for Simon. I don't think there's enough spells here to take down the Nexus for Fly, so that should be game, I believe. Especially with the Scout attack. You just swing in, and
you recognize that your opponent, if they spend all their mana on like fast answers, they still can't answer your board. You eat up their units, and then you can just relentless pursuit.
The spell coming into the stack here could be a Mystic Shot to take down yeah, just a static shot to take down the barrier at the very least. But yeah, I think too little too late. It's not going to be enough damage here. Only 2 mana left now for Simon, and he's still facing, you know, another protector coming down potentially, and a relentless pursuit to finish things off. So more than enough damage to come through, even with the stun on the Brightsteel Protector.
And Grizzle Ranger goes down, summons a 4/5 Badger Bear that almost, it's like they took the nerf away. And look at this, just more challenger units just non-stop. They just eat your board and you can't keep up. The pressure was on. Grand Plaza came through turn 3, and just unfortunately no Scorched Earth to fight against that monstrosity. So Scouts making a showing here in Fight Night Legends and really showing off the power.
That'll be 2-0 for Fly. So Fly moves on to the grand finals of this tournament. Ranu, Spanish player, is waiting for him there. He's been waiting for quite a while. And that is Simon and Sari both falling at the hands of Fly. So Fly coming in, taking down the top 2 from last week's tournament, and coming in pretty hot into the grand finals. He has a great opponent ahead of him, I think. And he might struggle against that Ash Frostbite list with something like Scouts and something like Ezreal Draven. But until now, I think he's played very cleanly. And yeah, showing why Scouts is still considered, you know, a very strong deck that just constantly reappears in the meta after every few months.
And we will see again if Fly's just Cinderella run from the bottom of the loser's bracket will prove true, or if Ranu's ability to predict the meta game for the tournament with his lineup will bring them the victory. So we'll see when we get back from the short break. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight Night Legends EU. You are just in time to see us head into the grand finals of today's tournament. We just saw a really fantastic match of Fly versus Salty Simon, and we're going to take a closer look at the bracket to see how we got here. To start things off, Fly had gotten 2-0'd by Sorry to move down into the losers bracket immediately, and then fought their way back up through, actually getting their revenge on Sorry, last week's champion, then taking down Salty Simon, last week's runner-up, to take down Ranu.
And that's a very exciting journey for Fly, where Ranu, he just got two 2-0s and he's been waiting in the finals for the past 2 hours. So not as exciting, not as heroic, but he proved that he was, a very good player, very clean play, and also maybe made the right decisions with his decks as well. Ash Frostbite being a classic in tournaments, and especially against, things like Fiora Shen, even against something like Lee Sin, for example, very strong as well. So I'm not surprised to see him, dominating a tournament in the winners bracket as well, and now has a chance to just quickly close it out in a best of three. Or Fly, of course, is going to try his best to try and go for the bracket reset in the first best of three and win the second best of three to take the title in this Fight Night tournament.
Both players have their work cut out for them, and both players also had the exciting and the back-to-back way of taking down last week's champions, right? The first and second place winners both had to fight Ranu and Fly, and so we have like just a new first and second place just switching out, a different pair of players. So when you have the pedigree of your new players already defeating last week's champions, I think it just really goes to show how these players fighting against one another really ups the game from week to week. Fly is representing Poland, currently lives in the UK, but don't anyone forget that Fly is indeed from Poland and reps them hardcore.
I'm living in Poland too, so I always have a connection to every single player. Either I'm part Spanish or part Swedish, or I'm living in Poland as well. So I'm good with Fly as well winning the tournament. I'm good with everyone winning, but Ranu is Spanish and I'm Spanish, so I'm a bit of a bias for him. I think he's a player that I've seen a lot, on ladder with very good results, and I haven't really seen that happening in tournaments just yet. But he's here with an opportunity to make it happen, and he's until now done a very good job. So I'm very happy to see him proving that, he's a very skilled player as well.
And don't forget that despite the outcome of this grand final set, both of these players will be invited back to next week's Fight Night EU. So I'm really excited to see if they're going to stick with their current lists as well, or if they're going to mix it up even further to bring it into the next Fight Night. How will the meta shift over the next week? But that's all looking into the future. We're going to focus on the present now, and we're going to focus on the decks that our finalists have brought for us today.
And we just saw Fly winning the last match. He's bringing in Ezreal Draven with Scorched Earth, so he does have some landmark removal. And Ranu is playing a deck with landmarks with Star Springs in his Tahm Kench Soraka list. So very important that he has this card in his deck, unlike Simon, who was bringing only the guillotines. Also has Get Excited, has one chump bump there as well for maybe some burst speed action with Ezreal, just for discard fodder with the mushrooms. But overall, nothing too surprising in this list. Of course, the big, aside from the champions, the big stars of the deck are going to be Farron and the Tri-Beam.
I think that it's going to be very important to time that correctly. And the other list from Fly, of course, is the Grand Plaza Scouts, which we just saw in action, has potential to have some pretty clunky outcomes, right? If you don't get your Grand Plaza or your misfortune early, the list loses a lot of its power, and it becomes very difficult to get those wins. But in any other instance, we can see the explosive power and potential of the deck when you get like Island Navigator or Grizzled Ranger when Grand Plaza's in play, or just a nice Relentless Pursuit to dig up lethals where you didn't think they were possible.
Usually you expect to win with a leveled up Misfortune, leveled up Quinn, but I think Fly has won in some pretty alternative means with getting, some great drops from Island Navigator, or just Relentless Pursuit being a big thing in both of the games he won with the Scouts list. So I think he's going to hope to do much of the same in this matchup against Ranu. We'll see what he can pull off, especially against Tahm Kench Soraka. Maybe he can just provide enough pressure early on that there's going to be a problem for Ranu to deal with it. But here we see the Tahm Kench Soraka list. Of course, you're running Star Springs. It's one of maybe the win condition more than just Nexus damage onto your opponent's Nexus. And I mentioned it, the Scorched Earth will be pivotal in trying to stop this game plan from Ranu.
And when you consider not just the Ezreal Draven matchup with Soraka, when you consider the other matchups like Plaza, right? There's potential for Plaza to maybe get out ahead of Soraka, or for Soraka to get established, and then you suddenly have a big blocker with 7 or 8 HP that you just can't get around, or potentially Tom Kench, stifling your ability to develop Grizzled Ranger or Quinn or Misfortune. So I'm really excited to see what direction that matchup is going to take. Uh, Ranu's other list, notably, is the classic Frostbite. Now, this one I say classic for sure because they aren't using Riven, and they went back to the basics of Ashe and Sejuani. You have Captain Farron at the top end, of course, but this version notably is going even back further in time to include the Brittle Steel, Avaros and Sentry, and Babbling Bjerg. This list has been existed in some way, shape, or form for such a long time, and so there's so many different iterations to pull from to adapt to any metagame. And this one has been coming up heavy for Ranu over the course of today's bracket.
Yeah, with Go Hard out of the meta makes it even better, but in this specific case as well, just you're going to have great matchups against, Ezreal Draven. You're able to stop Draven completely with its quick attack. You're able to stop Farron as well. You have Reckoning that can really just deal with a lot of the units in both Ezreal Draven and Scouts as well. Overall, you have a lot of great answers. Frostbite's always been very strong against decks that have certain synergies with attack token, with keywords like Overwhelm, keywords like Quick Attack, for example. And in Scouts, the same as well. You Frostbite a Scout unit, it can attack twice, sure, but it has 0 attack, so it's not going to do anything. So it makes things much, much trickier, and I think it's definitely going to be a deck that's going to get a very quick win in any of the matchups.
I think that Ranu is probably hoping to line up the Frostbite into the Scouts matchup, while Fly is probably going to be trying to line up the Soraka Tom Kench into the Scouts matchup and try to just go for that matchup, even though the percentages are maybe still a little bit in Soraka Tom Kench's favor. The Scouts maybe have a little bit of a better time into it. But looking at the opening, we've got Soraka Tom Kench into Ezreal Draven. This matchup is very spooky. Fly does have the Scorched Earth, but Ranu potentially just doesn't die. There isn't a lot of healing in the deck, but it is pretty difficult to answer potentially the Broadback Protector to just keep the Nexus, topped off.
And there's the Star Spring coming down, no Scorched Earth in hand. There's going to be a chance for Fly, of course, to draw it by the time it becomes relevant, the Wing Edition becomes relevant. And once you kill that Star Spring, even if it's already been charged up to 20, you're going to, negate all that progress, basically, and has to start again. So heads up, just to not really care too much about finding it in the mulligan. I think you have time still to find the Scorched Earth, but you do have to find it at some point in time and deal with that win condition for Ranu.
So this early game is where Soraka Tom Kench is going to be at its rockiest. You haven't had a chance to get a lot of mana floated in order to protect your units once they come down. You're going to have a lot of dangling damaged units that are open to Guillotine in Scorched Earth and Ravenous Flock, where if Fly gets a lot of early aggressive draws, could just out-tempo you. Fortunately, Ranu gets the early Star Spring, has Tom Kench waiting. So with a few key draws, like another Bastion and Astral Protection to really solidify this board, could get the foothold they need to start putting the pressure on. So Fly's just going to take the open attack, start getting that damage down, and working towards the Captain Farron win condition.
And you're happy just taking that damage because unlike most decks that we've been seeing today, Ranu does have healing in the deck, so he's not too worried about the early chip damage. And he has, of course, tools like Hush to stop most of the Farron overwhelm damage, etc. He has a lot of tools to really deal with the Ezreal Draven deck in the long term as well. So Ignition comes down here, gets the buff on the Ballistic Bot. We'll see if Ranu commits the Tom Kench here at this point, or just goes for the safer Broadback Protector, just keep nice and healthy, get that Star Spring proc as well with the Damage Protector next turn, and just play it safe for now, not commit too much more.
With the Protector healing the Nexus, this is going to give Fly so much more difficulty in getting them down to that key mana point. Even if you can kill the Broadback Protector with a Flock or a Guillotine, you have to worry about Bastion. As you get into the mid game, it becomes easier and easier for Ranu to play a 1-drop like a Crusty Codger or a 2-drop and have so much mana open to protect these units, especially with their high HP totals. When you're forced to chip them down with Mystic shots, the potential for them to just get healed right back up by the Star Spring is enormous.
And the chump bump there with the ignition, with the axes and the mushroom, there's a burn card there from Fly, so less than ideal there. Losing on that card there. Ranu, I think, is very happy, of course, with the Star Spring on the board and the heals coming in to just be extremely passive here. Gonna just pass. If Fly takes it, great. If he doesn't, then now I can react to what he ends up doing here.
And Ranu is also, again, just forcing Fly to react and respond to this board state and feel the pressure. The Boxtopus isn't doing anything like trying to answer the Draven. Ranu just doesn't care about Fly having a big board as long as Ranu is at unit parity. However, Ranu can't get lulled into a false sense of security here. Because the Scorched Earth has been included in Fly's variant, the Star Spring isn't a true win condition. It's going to come down probably to just raw value of maybe a leveled up Soraka drawing tons of cards. And if you can survive through the Captain Farron's, then you're good to go. Potentially with Tahm Kench plus Astral Protection, for example. You just have this monstrous unit you can't possibly remove.
There's a second Tri-Beam now as well drawn for Fly. And maybe if this game goes far enough where you find the Scorched Earth and you reset the Star Spring progress and there's not much else happening on the board with all these respect passes happening, that these Tri-Beams could end up being, 8-9 damage and maybe hitting something like a Ledros, for example, which could be huge. We'll see later on what it ends up doing, but
yeah, the 8 or 9 is just completely game winning, right? You can get something really nutty like Ledros, like you said, or Dreadway, and then suddenly your face damage is just astronomical. So now Fly has assembled a sizable board, has enough pressure here where they're forcing Ranu to block, and goes for the Hush here to take out the Ezreal. Notably,
and
the
fast speed, you have the Whirling Death that you can use with an axe onto the Draven, or just onto the Ballistic Bot.
Because the match has gone so passively up to this point, Fly's had time to just sit and gather so many different resources for various situations. And now with the Boxtopus that's also been sitting passively, it's been healed up to 4 HP, so it's hard to take down. You have to allocate these resources. So the Spinning Axes, Whirling Death, it looks like that is the line that Fly wants to take. Notably, a Spinning Axe on Draven with Whirling Death will level him up if it connects.
And you could just use more axes. I mean, you're getting +2 on this attack. Your opponent's already at 6 HP in theory if this connects as it is right now. You don't even have to use Whirling Death if you don't really care about Ezreal at this point.
That is true. That is true. Fly's variant does have Get Exciteds, so we could see just some burst damage come down. Soraka Tahm Kench, notable for its unit healing, but not really known for being able to heal its Nexus, especially for huge bursty swings. Ranu is getting punished heavily here for undercommitting their blocks.
The Ezreal does end up dying here, and you do still have a pretty scary, you still have 6 mana if you are Ranu. You have the chance to maybe develop the Tahm Kench finally, or to just, again, there's no Scorched Earth still. Like, is there something that you can do now with Astral Protection onto this Protector to get a ton of healing on the... Yeah, that could be what they're going for here.
Mm-hmm. The Broadback Protector needs to survive. It's the only reliable way to heal your Nexus up, especially from 4. At this point, you're dead to so many things. Oh, the Brummage is so good here as well. At this point, you just want to just keep fishing. Get excited. Get another Mystic shot. This could be huge.
Or just find the Scorched Earth to not just kill your opponent, but not die yourself, right? The Star Spring. Because this Astral Protection on a 2-1 Protector that's been... you have to find the Scorched Earth, I think. Or...
Exactly. Once it's been damaged, like, you can't fully heal the Broadback Protector unless you have something like a leveled up Soraka. Its HP pool is too high. You're going to need a second, like, Astral Protection or something nutty. But Rummage is going to come through and Captain Farron. This is so close. Fly has this within spitting distance. And unfortunately, ending the round here, Ranu's going to heal for 6.
He has to find the Scorched Earth, I think. I mean, once you find it, there's no protection for the landmark. At that point, I mean, you still have to deal with protectors that are constantly healing, so you're not going to get quite lethal just yet. But the biggest threat here is the Star Spring.
What did that say? 17 out of 22? I thought it was only 7. It hasn't healed for too much.
I think it has. It's been a few turns now. I think it's fairly close, I believe. Especially once you get the Astral Protection onto the 2-1.
Yeah, because that gives it 4 HP and then heals it for 4. I don't think Ranu wants to commit that because, again, it would just die to Flock anyway. Just really wants to get the Nexus healing, even lets the Broadback Protector go down.
He went into 4 HP, but, I mean, he's right back up to 12. We talked about, you don't really have Nexus healing, but the double Protectors is going to do a lot for you. And you're able to, heal back up to 12, so you're very healthy again. This Farron coming down, though, is pretty massive, but you've wasted almost all your mana, and is that going to be a punish potentially? Yeah,
the Ranu's hand is all spells. You've got the Guiding Touch there for a little bit more Nexus healing, but nothing that can really block out this Captain Farron. You can go for Astral Protection on the Tahm Kench just so you don't take the overwhelm damage, but Ranu right now is just relying purely on Broadback Protector and Guiding Touch to survive here. And also just a small shout out to the Tri-Beam Improbulator getting Scribe of Sorrows, which generated an Ezreal, so that's fun. But Ranu at 2 HP, this is lethal.
Yeah, there won't be any Guiding Touches in hand, so I mean, there's no way to heal Nexus now, and maybe committing too little, like you mentioned, to that block a while ago.
Ranu was not expecting that burst damage for sure. And it wasn't until you pointed out the spinning axes onto the Ballistic Bot that I was like, oh no.
The protection comes in, keeps him a bit safer here, stops all the Farron damage. We'll see if it's enough. He's going to stay at 6 HP now. Can survive here. There could be a Whirling Death onto the Farron, and that's going to be almost lethal.
Fly figuring out if it's worth it. Gotta be. Yeah, set them down to 1 HP. You have Get Excited in hand. You have Ezreal. You have a Mystic Shot in hand. You have Decimates. Just clear them out, right? 1 HP, it's impossible to come back from that. Draven also has Overwhelm. Is there some kind of weird mathematics here? Let's go.
This puts Ranu down to 1 HP. It's going to be the best option here, I think. And I think Ranu knows that he can't do much at this point. He's going to be Surrender coming in. And Game 1, no Scorched Earth necessary. Star Spring ends up not being fulfilled. We talk about this deck needing kind of the perfect curve to really shine. Missing Soraka, possibly maybe playing a bit too slow if you're Ranu. Might be a matchup he doesn't have that much experience with, but overall it was looking good at the beginning without any answer to Star Spring, and both players playing passively. It would end up, helping out Ranu, I think, in the long run, especially with Double Protector as well to continue healing up. But I think not respecting the damage enough, and just not developing in time where you just got overrun by Farron, by the Draven leveling up as well. And like you mentioned, the axes on the Ballistic Bot, getting the +2 per axe on both Draven and the bot.
And with Soraka Tahm Kench, when you're playing a deck that's passive like this, and you're allowing your opponent to just set up a board, you're basically, you're going full all in, saying my board is going to be bigger and beefier than yours, and even if you have a bunch of units in play, you won't actually be able to threaten me. And that just ended up not coming to pass for Ranu. Perhaps not using the Boxtopus offensively enough.
Another very awkward hand for Ranu to start things off. Not even close to perfect curve. You find the Star Spring, sure, but you have no units to back this up. You have already 5 damage being done on your HP. There's Grand Plaza coming in with Navigator on the next turn for Fly, and this could almost be game already. I mean, again, Pill Cascade, you don't have any units to stop this.
Yeah, the open attack is going to be so strong here. Your hope is that Fly, just plays Grand Plaza and wants to greed for an open attack. But now, you develop one unit, Fly develops a unit with Challenger that peels that to the side. Croaker has no target to draw a card. This is absolutely abysmal. So sad. Croaker, you can use Pale Cascade. You have to here just to draw. It's still not going to clear this scout unit. The Hush is nice, but
maybe just a second Pale Cascade to try and find more units, I think is the way to go here.
Yeah, just up trade, preserve your body, and Tahm Kench. At this point, though, against scouts, when you're down 2 or 3 units, it gets so difficult to fight back. Look, with the scout attack, the double Pale Cascade on the Croaker, it still dies, and we're back to square one. Ranu with no units and Fly with 2.
And 10 HP as well, so it's definitely a threat now. Now finds the Soraka and the Tahm Kench here. Is it too little too late, though? With only 5 mana to play here, once you commit one of these, you don't get really value with them by themselves. Tahm Kench, of course, until next turn, you don't find value, but it might be too late after an open attack.
Yeah, Fly has Quinn, or even Grizzled Ranger. Grizzled Ranger's a bit weak to Hush. I think Fly would probably rather opt for Quinn here, actually. Just get more units, get an even wider board for the open attack, plus Relentless Pursuit, potentially. Because with an open attack, you're also damaging the Tahm Kench, which makes the Acquired Taste spell a lot less good. And with Sharp Sight, the lethal is here. Fly's taking their time, despite being ahead, being in a really good position, taking the extra time to calculate the lines of play, see what's going to deal the most damage, what has the highest chance of success before they commit here. But the explosive power of Grand Plaza Scouts is just waiting to spill forth onto the battlefield.
There's going to be the Shakedown coming in just to try and reduce the size of this board a tiny bit. Ranger's Resolve won't do anything here. Only 1 HP for the Fleet Feather Tracker, and there's going to be a 2 attack on the Tahm Kench. So doing a good enough job there of trying to reduce this onslaught a little bit from Fly.
There is still the Hush for the Grizzled Ranger, but again, Quinn coming down with Grand Plaza is just one of the strongest plays you can do. You get a 4/5 and then a 3/2, and they both have Challenger and Scout. It's just so much damage to deal with. You can play Soraka here, and as you already mentioned, because you're spending all of your mana on units, trying to just keep up with this pressure and this tempo, you just don't have the additional mana and resources to use your defensive spells the way you want to either.
We'll see if there's enough that Ranu can do here with these blockers, with all the spells he has in hand as well to protect these blockers and try and find, with the Hush, like you mentioned, some way to survive this at 10 HP right now.
So Fly now thinking about which units are going to get challenged where. Yeah, you can use Sunblessed Vigor to keep the Tahm Kench alive with 1 HP, and it's going to get scooped up by Valor on the Scout attack. Having a 0 attack unit is just so unfortunate here. And Grizzled Ranger goes unblocked, is able to connect with the Nexus. Ranu down to 7 Nexus HP against Plaza Scouts here. Soraka can come down as well to get another blocker, but this is still not enough units, not enough blockers.
That's lethal with Sharp Sight on the unblocked unit. It's going to be 8 damage pushed through. So Fly able to take this game too. No more mana for anything, to any response from Ranu. And Tahm Kench Soraka not doing a good enough job here of stopping this very aggressive play. A lot of pressure coming in from Fly from both his decks. Wins the first best of 3 series in this grand finals. Able to bracket reset now. And now Ranu has a chance, of course. He was on the winner's bracket final, or winner's bracket the entire tournament. So he has now a second chance. There's a bracket reset, and Fly has to win now his second best of 3, whereas Ranu has a chance to still fight back and just close it out in this final best of 3 between these two players.
The decks really, it just shows how volatile some of these matchups can be. Soraka Tahm Kench is known for just how sharp its matchups are, where in certain matchups it dominates. So if you can't deal with Soraka Tahm Kench, once Tahm Kench comes down, he just eats your board every turn and you can't develop anymore. Scouts functions in that same sort of capacity, where once they get set up, you just can no longer establish a board presence and you just get smothered out of the game. The Ezreal Draven was also finally piloted there. Fly has just been on a monstrous run up from the losers bracket and just is carrying that momentum up through. We'll see after this bracket reset if Ranu can maybe readjust, maybe wants to show off that frostbite list and maybe get a run back.
Yeah, with the pretty poor results from Tonkin Soraka, maybe he decides to switch things up in terms of the matchup order. Maybe now there's some mental games between both players, having to play, the same best of three. Obviously, the outcome was definitely in favor of Fly this case around. Is it, the right call to change up some variables, maybe queue up a different deck instead for game one? If you expect the same deck from Fly as well. So we'll find out. Both players taking a bit of their time, obviously, to pick what deck to queue up and what order to go through here. But this is the do or die best of three series now for both players.
And we wouldn't have it any other way at Fight Night Legends. I think that even last week, it really came down to the wire. And the champions that we've had so far have had to fight for their spots. And when the brackets are this stacked and the matchups are this tight, it's going to come down to the wire just like this. And Ranu had a really good time, right? Kind of abusing favorable matchups to get to the winner's bracket. But Fly, with just that slight tweak of bringing scouts over Fiora Shen, say, is just having a better time of it, right? Having that little bit of an aggressive edge to punish the Soraka Tahm Kench, which we didn't see previously.
Looks like there is a bit of a change up here in the matchups. Ranu has decided to finally bring out his Ashe Frostbite list, and Fly is sticking to what he does best. He's bringing this Ezreal Draven game one like he has in the last few series we've watched him with. And looking at the hand right now, we see House Spider, a great turn 2 play. We see triple Trapper. The triple Trapper Tongue Twister for Ranu in hand. So he's ready to go for the mid game. And there's no Tribeam in hand yet for Fly, which is obviously not as ideal, and no Draven either.
So the Yetis are just so godlike in this matchup, right? Even though they die to Flock, because you only paid 1 mana for it, it does not feel nearly as bad as any other units. Plus, the Avros and Trapper's base body as a 3/3 trades superbly into all of Ezreal Draven's early mid game, right? You've got a blocker potentially for Draven because Ranu is running Brittle Steel. Fly has to be so careful about attacking even when it seems when they might have an advantage, because when you're playing around Troll Chant, you're like, oh, my opponent has 2 mana, I'll play around Troll Chant. But when your opponent has 1 mana, you have to play around Brittle Steel, and it becomes so dangerous to take any sort of advantageous trade here. So Ranu, with the second Avros and Trapper, Fly is just trying to stabilize and get a wide board in preparation for the Yetis.
And he's thinking, oh, great open attack. But no, there's a 1 mana 5/5 ready to stop, some of the damage you're going to bring in here. But the biggest thing now for Ranu would be to find a Assessor with these Yetis and to kind of make up for, once you find 2 Yetis, for example, you can play Assessor the next turn possibly with Ashe on the board as well. Then you're really going to pop off and get all the card draw right back.
This is terrifying. The double Yetis. You've got, at the very least, you've got this one chipped down to 2 HP, so you can use the Mystic Shot. You can chip it out with the Spider. You're so worried about the Troll Chant here. Ranu only has 2 copies, but that's all you need to make your opponent sweat. And by forcing the opponent to respect your combat tricks, you can develop with so much of your leftover mana.
At this point, only 1 mana left, so you're very easily going to go for this Sentry onto the Ashe. Ashe can't attack now, can't Frostbite any units either, and you have a chance to kill her with Flock as well. But that means you can't really use Flock on the Yeti, and you can't Mystic Shot the Yeti this turn either. So if Ranu would have full attacked her, could have been a problem for Fly, but instead going to opt for only the 3/3 attacking here. Doesn't want to get any chip damage on the Yetis for now.
I think that Ranu is opting for the line you mentioned where they're hoping for a really godlike top deck Assessor to draw 4 cards. Now, third Trapper is also waiting in the wings here. You've got your mid game on lock. With Ashe going down, your board position isn't as strong. And I think you're fine with committing to the third Yeti because you need to wait for the attack token to come back to you to make this Sejuani worth it anyway. This is a little bit of an awkward issue when it comes to openings like this, though. You have the triple Trapper, and you're just drawing Yetis, you're drawing some additional value and pressure, but you aren't getting the real meat and potatoes out of your deck, right? You're just getting a generically strong token that's just getting cleaned up. And if Fly can get a rummage before Ranu gets an assessor, we could see this game swing very violently.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned the assessor being so important, because it shores up all weaknesses that having, triple Yeti draw would give you if you would play all 3 trappers. But without an assessor in hand, probably playing the 3rd trapper wasn't worth it. But now we're looking at the hand state for Ranu. It's not looking too great. The Reckoning was pretty good, but this Ezreal's already leveled up.
So there we go. Ezreal gets that free connection onto the Nexus. With the Reckoning being dodged, it's very likely that this Ezreal is going to survive for a couple more rounds. Ranu does, of course, have the Culling Strike, but that's going to be a long ways off. Both players running very low on resources, but Fly does have Captain Farron, and that is the win condition in a box.
And Sejuani here is the play to make. You give the Ezreal vulnerable, able to try and kill it this turn as well. With 3 mana, there's not really much that can be done here. If you are Fly to stop this from happening, you can. I think, yeah, it's safe to put the Ezreal on the Yeti here and go for the Sejuani kill on the Chump Bump and get some overwhelm damage as well. The Mushrooms comes in for the Ezreal burst speed pings on the Nexus as well, but we're still pretty far away from a kill here if you are Fly. The Farron will be huge next turn.
So the Brittle Steel goes down the Chump Bump as well. You're keeping both your units healthy. You don't want the Flock. You don't want the Guillotine or the Scorched Earth to get any value. And so now the ball is back in Fly's court. And the only reasonable play, of course, is Captain Farron.
Icefield Archer, though, drawn right in time.
The top. Let's go. So and Captain Farron is
the major shutdown for Farron.
He is put on ice. 3rd Trapper's coming down, along with the Avros and Sentry, and Yeti off the top. This is where you want Reckoning. You want Assessor. You want another Ash or a Culling Strike, but you're just like, another Yeti? I guess so. So nice open attack here. 2 HP.
The biggest thing with Ash Frostbite is that you don't really have burn damage outside of your own Farron and your own Decimates. So we talked about that. Down to 2 HP, sure, but is it enough to stop the triple Decimate? We talked about the 12 being the magic number. It was once again here the 12 magic number, and double Decimate comes in for Fly. It was close around, but not close enough.
Mushroom took from 13 HP down to 12, and who knows, right? The 3rd Yeti there. If they had not played that Trapper, maybe they top deck Assessor, they get some other line of play, but just not enough to swing through there to get that lethal, unfortunately. It seemed so good, right, with the Trappers in the opening hand, but Fly fought back with the Flocks and with the Chump blockers. The Yetis don't have any stats. As long as you have something shrimpy to tank those attacks, you are good to go. Ranu is going to stay on Frostbite, and Fly is now on Scouts.
Right away, we see Glory Seeker and Brittle Steel, a great pairing to start things off for Ranu to try and control the board, especially with Misfortune, for example, could be a huge thing as well. But that being said, Glory Seeker is at 1 HP, so very vulnerable unit in this matchup.
The timing of Glory Seeker is going to be huge. You can do Glory Seeker now just to bully your opponent from developing anything into it, and see, then they just pass. But now the Glory Seeker is just going to die to Misfortune into attack, potentially, because of the Love Tap. Troll Chant off the top does save this. You also have Culling Strike.
Yeah, I think Culling Strike is the way to go here. You're able to trade. You're going to end up trading the Glory Seeker because Misfortune is going to be dying before you can go for the actual attack and get that ping on the board from Misfortune. So easy answer here, but Ranu was highlighting himself. Double Farron to start things off against an aggressive deck like Scouts that tries to, kind of almost combo you down in the mid game before you can reach that 8-mana turn even. It might be too slow, and it might be a problem here.
And Ranu also just committing the Brittle Steel along with the Culling Strike to play around Sharpsight, of course. And now we're definitely in a bit of a pickle. Fly, maybe sensing the awkwardness of Ranu's hand, could set up Grand Plaza here pretty easily. Not under a lot of pressure.
The repulse here could be, I mean, not really that massive. You're going to save it. Yeah, it's not really worth it taking on the 3-3. You're going to go for the Plaza instead, like you mentioned. And next turn will be an explosive turn with Quinn potentially coming down or Island Navigator.
So this is where the game really takes off. Again, you've got the Grand Plaza. You can play one action that summons 2 units, and your opponent can only respond with 1 unit. So you're always ahead of them in terms of having a board set up and a board establishment. And then you're getting these really godlike value trades with Scout and with Challenger, allowing you to select the trades to your liking. With Island Navigator waiting in the wings for next round, with Cythria being developed potentially next round into that attack. This is really, really terrifying for Ranu. He's going to need to get a Reckoning or something immediately, but that's only if Ash can survive.
Yeah, your control chant here will be doubly effective because there's going to be 2 attacks from the Scout. So whatever unit you get the -2 attack on, it's going to lose out on that attack for 2 different attacks. That being said, I don't think it'll be enough to help this Ash to keep her alive. We'll see what ends up being the case here.
Yeah, Ash dies anyway, unfortunately.
And there's a sharp side as well, so even more so.
So we'll see how Fly commits this. Maybe lets the initial trade go through. Fleet Feather Tracker finishes off Ash. Just wants the first hit to go through to finish off the Ash. This is going to open up the Fleet Feather to finish off the Trapper, and then Quinn can get a little bit of Nexus damage.
And that's 2 counters already on Quinn, 2 out of 4, so that becomes a threat as well to close out the game later on. And looking at the hand for Ranu, there's not many options. Again, Farron clogging up the hand completely, and he's only running 2 of them in the deck, I believe. Yeah, it is only 2, so he just drew both of them in hand. The Bjerg and the Yeti can do something now to try and create a bit of a wall here, but Island Navigator next turn might be enough to just plow through with the Scouts as well and level up Quinn even.
Yeah, the double Farron into this matchup is just a death sentence. Now with Quinn, Island Navigator, and Relentless Pursuit, the only card that saves you here is something like Harsh Winds. The Ice Veil Archer will help a little bit, but the thing is, Cythria is... And there's the Bark Beast again! Oh my goodness, these 1-drops are so strong off of Island Navigator, Riot, please! But Cythria now, as a 6/6, is also going to grant an AoE buff plus Fearsome to this board. And with the Relentless Pursuit, that buff stacks again on itself. Look at this, Island Navigator doesn't care that she's Frostbitten, she still has Challenger, pulls the 3/1 to the side, and it's just a matter of picking your poison. Fly is still worried about Harsh Winds.
Yeah, I think you really want the Quinn level up here, so you have to be careful on what you're going to be doing here exactly, but I think you can level up the Bark. You're just going to go for the straight up just kill on the Babbling Bjerg with the Bark Beast. Make the Yeti either defend, either die here or just take the 6 from Cythria, and then with this kind of attack, I think you're already expecting a Pursuit to come in as well.
Mm-hmm. And you just test, right, for the Frostbite. If they Frostbite, you don't Pursuit, and if they don't have it, then you just put them under more pressure, because, again, the Cythria buff is just going to stack. And with Quinn leveling up, you get Valor to automatically come into play and peel a blocker.
Yeah, and the Island Navigator itself will be able to drag whatever units played after, so even if you're trying to somehow get a way to kill Quinn on the next attack, it's not going to be possible. With Valor coming out and the Challenger still there on one of the Scout units, there's no chance actually to stop this from happening. So I think it's just too much pressure, and Ranu just doesn't have the right answers in the right amount of time.
Yeah, Fly was actually the only player that brought Plaza Scouts to the tournament this time, and it ends up paying off huge dividends. Initially, it was, speculated that Plaza just didn't have such a great matchup against Ezreal Draven, but it just so happened to be that the stars aligned and there wasn't enough Scorched Earth in the bracket to really keep this deck down. Despite Fly getting knocked down to the loser's bracket early, just the draws were there and they fought their way back up through. So now Quinn levels up, peels Ash to the side, and we've got another helping of Smork for Ranu, and there is 2 big Pharons in hand, and it's not even round 8.
And Cytheria has buffed, there was a Frostbitten Island Navigator. It's already back to 2 attack. If keep going, it might end up going back to its normal numbers. But big win there by Fly, wins the entire tournament, able to get the bracket reset and the 2-0 here in the second best of 3. He's been playing, pretty fantastically, but he's also gotten some crazy, draws from Navigator, from Tribeam as well. Just some very good results and a lot of very bricked hands from Ranu, I think, in a lot of the last few matchups, which is unfortunate to see. But I think still, both players played really, really well. And Fly, I talked about, a UK player, or a player living in the UK, coming up and showing up in the tournaments, and he's done it. He's shut me up, able to win this fight night number 7.
So yeah, the various regions of Europe, whatever you happen to represent, the players themselves are always bringing their A game. And regardless of what the meta may look like, there's always a chance for a shakeup or any small adaptation to whatever you expect to bring to the tournament, just paying off for you. And we've seen it here from Fly to just bring it all the way back from the losers bracket for a very convincing back-to-back win to close out that bracket reset in the grand finals. But we are going to head to a break here in just a moment. See you soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Fight Night Legends EU. We just witnessed an explosive grand finals reset, and we are now on the mic with our newly crowned champion, Fly, for an interview. How are you doing, my friend?
Hello, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So great showing, obviously, in this tournament. You brought, I think, a fantastic lineup that, Scouts still proving to be a very, very good deck. Big surprise. I want to ask you about your current rank. I see it's diamond in the player cards. Have you not been playing much this season? Have you not liked this expansion or this current meta as much, or is there another reason for that?
Yeah, there's multiple reasons. I started a new part-time job. I'm in my final year of uni, so I have quite a lot of work, and I've not been playing that much this month. Speaking of which, I don't know what these guys are smoking. Like, how do they lose to a Diamond free player that's played like 20 games this season?
Yeah, a bit embarrassing, I think. The rest of the competitors will have to definitely try and not cry themselves to sleep tonight. But great showing from you. I think you're a player that you've already proven, in EU Masters, you made a name for yourself, so it wasn't a big surprise for you to take this tournament. But my question now is, looking to the future, you're obviously going to be here next week as well for the next fight night. Are you going to start playing more? Are you still very busy with your real life stuff? Is there anything that you're going to prepare for maybe the next EU Masters that happens or the next seasonal tournament?
I don't know. For next week, I'll see what. Honestly, for this week, I just chose the two best decks, and I knew how to play both of them, so I just picked them because like there's all these Zoe decks and other stuff, but I've not really played the new champions too much. So it'll probably be similar for next week because I still have like quite a lot of work for uni and stuff. And then for the other tournaments, they've obviously not been announced yet. So when they happen, I'll obviously try to qualify because I am very competitive and I enjoy playing tournaments. So. And I actually, even more so than playing ladder, like from the few games I've played, this meta feels really stale for me. I don't know why. Maybe I haven't played really since Gohad got nerfed, so maybe it's different now. But I've not really been enjoying it. So tournaments are a lot more fun for me than ladder right now.
And you've certainly demonstrated, I think, that, just the love for tournaments, right? It's a much different environment. Do you have maybe a group of players or maybe a training partner that you do practice and shop up your decks with that you'd like to maybe give a shout out to?
Yeah, there's one guy mainly, Ale Caesar. He's in chat right now. I can see him as well. Yeah, he helps me out every time I have a tournament. I always hit him up. He's like top 10 on the EU ladder right now, I think. And yeah, he always helps me out with preparation for tournaments. Also, Mezume or Krisheka or Chris, whatever you want to call him, he helps me out sometimes as well. So yeah, I asked him for his opinion as well for these decks.
And were they all in agreement with your lineup, or did you have to go against the grain to bring what you brought?
No, they agreed pretty much. Like Ale basically gave me deck lists to use, and I just swapped out a few cards, and then we agreed that's a good lineup. And Krisheka, he just said it seems all right. Really, I didn't want to give him too much insight because I know he's in a group with Sorry, so I didn't,
Yeah, they talked about it last week where a lot of the winners for Fight Night EUs have been from that practice group with Marcus and Sari and Krisheka as well. So I understand the need to be wary there to not get any secrets leaked to the opponents. But again, Fly, congratulations. It was a great showing from you. You had some interesting deals with the devil with that Bark Beast coming back once again with an Island Navigator, but I think you played very well as well. So obviously not just RNG, but you had some fortunate things occur with the game with Ranu as well, having no units for a while. I think you must have noticed as well with the Tonka and Soraka. But overall, you played really great, and it'll be great to see you next week as well for the next fight night.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so thank you for your time, and we will see you next week. Is there any players that maybe you're looking forward to playing in that next bracket?
Next week?
Yeah.
Not sure. I don't know. It depends who's playing.
We'll try to dig up whoever we can then to challenge your fantastic Plaza might. But until then,
I don't want to play Lobster. I always lose to him.
All right, so we'll invite Lobster then. Thanks for letting us know.
We'll jot that down. Thank you very much. And yeah, enjoy your win and congratulations once more. You have a good one, my friend.
Thank you.
And so that, again, was our grand final winner, Fly, with the bracket reset. He'll be back next week alongside the runner-up as well, Ranu. And we'll see if they'll bring the same decks, maybe something a little bit different. But you also need to stay tuned, dear viewers, because we have more Fight Night goodness lined up for you for the NA bracket. That'll be taking place in 3 hours. So that will be about 3 p.m. Eastern time. So stay tuned for that. And
well, in a bit more than 3 hours, because we finished so quickly today with these scout stacks just driving in the pressure, that it is going to be happening in about 3 hours and 45 minutes. So a little bit more time than before, but at midnight CET time, if you're in Europe like I am, and in different time in America.
So it'd be 3 p.m. Pacific time, which is my time zone, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the Blevins is in chat to make sure I'm getting my times correct this week. Appreciate y'all again for stopping by to join us today for this fantastic bracket. And we will see you all in a few hours, but also next week for more Fight Night EU. You have a good one, y'all.